There were two dukes in the empire, Shuetz, Lord of the Battlefield, and Clyde, Lord of Trade. Their alliance was so strong that it almost equaled the power of the imperial family. They were close friends, but 10 years ago, the Duke and Duchess of Clyde fell into an eternal sleep after their carriage fell off a cliff. Upon learning of this, Duke Shuetz rushed to the scene and found the bodies of the couple and the child's clothes. But the search in the north was unsuccessful. The missing child was never found. It was only 10 years later that fate brought them together again, and the Duke announced that he would adopt the child. As in the original story, Duke Shuetz found the main character, Damien. The girl kept her promise. He would meet his family, and she would not be expelled from the orphanage. 4 years later, Damien will go to war with Duke Shuetz and meet the heroine, Isabelle. But now the Duke unexpectedly announces that he will adopt another child to be close to him. The servant asks if she will become his adopted daughter, but the Duke replies no. He intends to take her as his daughter-in-law, and the girl is shocked and does not understand his words. She just wanted to change her future, where she would be kicked out of the orphanage. But she didn't expect this. A little earlier, the man looked at the children and said that they looked good. The orphanage worker replied that the children come first here and he can choose anyone. It was an era of wealth, when the empire was victorious in wars large and small. Aristocrats began to adopt war orphans, showing off their wealth and generosity. That was the official version, but the heroine understood that it was all a lie. The children were fed and washed only so that the aristocrats would like them. The director only brought in beautiful orphans, but one day he found a crying baby girl. He asked where her mother was, and the heroine realized that she was one of those children. But the director did not take into account one important thing. Her mother was a famous thief. She was caught stealing from a great countess and put to sleep forever. When the girl was returned for the third time, an accident revealed the truth to her. She realized that she lived in a world of books, where people were easy to control. In her past life, she worked on such ideas and loved her job. Therefore, the realization of her past life seemed like a fortunate occurrence to her. But one question remained. Of all the books she had read, she clearly remembered only this novel. She did not remember the title, but she was happy to know the future. The director enters the room, and it is clear from her appearance that she has lost money again. The girl notices a new child behind her, calm and not nervous at all. The woman announces that this is their new friend, who will be living here. His name is Damien, and the heroine immediately understands who he is. He is the future overthrower of the Emperor Damien Clyde, and she is the villainess Elida, who bullied him at the orphanage. The main character's life was unhappy from the very beginning. His father owned the best lands, and the Emperor secretly destroyed the Clyde family. However, the Duke foresaw trouble and bequeathed everything to his friend Erhard Shuetz. Since then, all eyes have turned to Duke Shuetz, the ruler of the harsh north. The lands, teeming with monsters, made him a true monster of war. The aristocrats whispered about whether he would receive all of the Clyde territories. The Duke, however, thought only of the missing child with black hair and blue eyes. He believed that the boy would survive even among monsters. The heroine remembers this and realizes that she is looking at the future main character. In the novel, he went through a lot, but reality turned out to be even worse. Although she herself is small, this boy is even smaller. The director tells the children to explain the rules of the shelter to the newcomer, but everyone remains silent and complains that there is already not enough space and food. The older boy, Carson, says that their portions will now be smaller. He orders the newcomer to obey and look him in the face. The other children complain about the boy's gaze, and Carson suggests they have some fun. The heroine realizes that they will take pity on her, because in the original story she helped their gang. For this, she was expelled and her life ended tragically. She decides that this time, she will save the boy. Carson invites her to join them, but she refuses. He is surprised, because she always agreed, but the girl says that the boy is too weak. Looking into his eyes, she suddenly freezes. She remembers the words about her being the daughter of a dirty thief. The girl shudders, and at that moment the director enters. He announces that it is time to prepare for dinner. The heroine realizes that the bullying of Damien will begin right now. If she remains silent, will she be able to avoid a bad ending? In the kitchen, she washes potatoes and thinks that this isn't even her life. Damien is the main character. He will survive anyway. But she can't get his gaze out of her head. She has seen many such stories, and they ended badly. So he decides to help only once. The girl knocks on the door, and Carson opens it. He is surprised to see Elida, thinking that the director has come. She asks what is going on, and he points to the boy by the bed. Carson says it's a welcome ceremony for a newcomer. He lifts Damien up and laughs at his cute face. Elida replies that it's better than his own ugly mug. Then she smiles and says that the director is looking for him. Carson grumbles, but puts the boy down and leaves. The girl comes up and asks if he's okay. The boy silently turns away from her. She holds out the stolen ointment and asks him to apply it to his wounds. But he replies that they will beat him up again anyway. The girl is surprised by his calmness. This child already knows how to endure violence. She leaves the ointment anyway and asks him to use it later. As she leaves, she realizes that she underestimated his pain. His face reminds her of her own. At dinner, the director orders everyone to eat in silence. The heroine notices that Damien is not at the table. If he skips dinner, he will go hungry until tomorrow. The boy next to her asks if he can have her bread. She refuses and says she will eat later. Later, she goes to her bedroom, even though she is supposed to clean the kitchen. It seems she is too worried about this boy. But he is not in the bedroom. A voice calls out from behind her. It's Garson. He asks if she is looking for ghosts. The girl replies that she was just checking on Betty. Garson says there are more fun things to do. His friend recalls that Damien used to be a slave. He even caught monsters in the dark. Carson asks if she is interested in this little guy. She quickly replies that she isn't and says that the boy has gone to the warehouse. The red-haired young man confidently says that no one can go there, except teachers. And why would this guy go there anyway? The girl replies that maybe the teachers just care about him in a special way. After all, she saw him go in there with the teaching assistants. And the warehouse is full of delicious food. And as the guy said, he's so handsome. Maybe that's why. He also knows that beautiful children are considered more useful to the orphanage. They used to say that this guy caught a monster, which means he really has incredible skills. That's why they don't make him clean up. Elida understands that Damien doesn't work because he is a slave and has a separate master. But Carson doesn't even suspect this. At this point, the young man turns to the girl and asks if she didn't see that the idiot couldn't even move in front of them. Elida realizes that in such cases, they usually say that they just felt sorry for the newcomer. Then she asks if that means Carson is stronger. He confidently replies that yes, he is. After that, the guy tells them to go to the warehouse. But the main character stops Carson and asks him to wait. She takes bread out of her purse and tells him to take it because she left it there especially for him. The guy is surprised and asks why she suddenly cares so much. The girl is slightly embarrassed and quietly replies that he might just eat it. A little later, the young lady goes out into the street and thinks that perhaps Karsena is being scolded right now. And indeed, at that moment, one of the women loudly protests and shouts at them for daring to steal food. The young man quickly replies that this is not the case. He was simply told that Damien was there. But the woman tells him to be quiet and asks what kind of bread he has in his hands. Elida realizes that she had originally intended to give this bread to Damien. But now it has unexpectedly come in handy in a completely different way. The girl looks around and wonders where the boy is now. The words of the other kids come to mind. They said that this idiot was a slave even before he came here. There are even rumors that once, in the dark, he caught some kind of monster. The main character wonders if all this is true. But she really doesn't want the boy to continue living in such a place. In the original novel, the Duke once asked young Damien if he had learned to wield a sword. After all, his skills seemed truly incredible. The young man calmly replied that in order to survive in the darkness, he simply had no choice. He had to learn how to wield a sword. At that moment, the girl thought it was just a cliché for the main character's development. But now, approaching the guy, she smiles gently and says that he could hurt himself. Then she asks if he understands how difficult it will be if he catches a cold. The young lady also tells him that Carson's group has been caught by the teacher, so today, he can sleep peacefully. And the girl suggests that he just go back. Damien replies that even if they were caught, it was only today. Tomorrow they will return anyway. Besides, he is much more comfortable here than going back there. At that moment, the girl realizes that this child's life has been a real tragedy. And he seems to have shut himself away in deep darkness. Everything was so painful that over time he simply got used to it. Perhaps that is why he took up the sword. The girl can't help but wonder what kind of person would willingly choose to remain alone in complete darkness. Then she quietly says that they will no longer be there. He will return, and they will soon disappear. And she promises this. The girl assures him that nothing threatens him anymore, so she offers him to come back again. The young man looks at the main character in shock. Suddenly, he remembers how she had offered him the ointment before. After that, he quietly asks why she is doing all this. Elida realizes that everything is exactly as she said. She really wanted this. And she doesn't know if this child will be able to understand her. But she definitely can't fall into an eternal sleep, as happened in the original. So now she tells him to get up quickly. She was so worried about him that she couldn't even eat properly. And now she offers to go get something to eat. Hearing about food, the young man extends his hand to the young lady. The girl realizes that, fortunately, Damien is not resisting at all. And that alone begins to change her destiny. Meanwhile, the young man walks behind the girl and smiles quietly. After a while, the main character gestures to the boy to be quiet. She whispers that from now on, everything must be done as quietly as possible. After all, the principal and teachers have gone to the casino. But it is still unknown whether any of them have stayed behind. The girl puts the lamp on the table and tells the boy to undress. The young man looks at her in surprise. But Elida repeats that he needs to take off his clothes. After all, it's impossible to wash while wearing them. The young man still looks at her in shock. The girl explains that there is hot water in the director's bathroom. And doesn't he feel that his body is now cold as ice? If he gets frostbite, he will have to have his arm, leg, or even both amputated. Therefore, the girl confidently says that this cannot be allowed to happen. And if he feels uncomfortable because of her presence, she will simply leave. But the young man quietly replies that his body is disgusting. The main character realizes that before the shelter, he lived like a slave. And there are surely many wounds left on his body. The young man apologizes and says that she will be surprised when she sees his body. But the girl takes his hands and calmly says that it is not disgusting at all. So he doesn't need to be embarrassed or apologize. There's nothing wrong with it. Then the girl urges him to hurry up and come in. They don't know when the director will return, so there's no time to waste. Even though it's awkward, she asks if he can wash himself. The young man agrees. The girl says she will find some clothes and leave them outside the door. And his clothes should soak well in warm water for now. After that, the girl happily says that it's great, and she herself is going to rob the warehouse. Meanwhile, the young man carefully climbs into the bathtub and immediately thinks about how warm it is here. After a while, the main character asks if he has finished washing. She also asks if he regrets agreeing to do it. She adds that the clothes are a little big, but she took the smallest set. And anyway, the guy looks really cute. The girl asks if he will continue to wear it. Then she hands him a plate, and she says that the most important thing is that while he was washing, she managed to steal food from the warehouse. The young man looks at all this in surprise. The main character asks what's wrong. Has he never eaten anything like this before? The young man nods, and the girl begins to wonder what the merchants fed this little boy and how he grew up. Then she tells him to try making a sandwich. It's very tasty. And she shows him how to eat it properly. The boy repeats after her and asks if he is doing everything right. The girl smiles and says yes, everything is perfect. The young man tries it and thinks how delicious it is. The main character notices that he now looks like a puppy with big cheeks. Then she asks if he hasn't even dried his hair. The girl asks him to wait a second. He has just come in from the cold, and if he stays like that, he might catch a cold. The main character starts drying his hair and realizes that he really does look like a little puppy. But the distance between them has become much smaller. Suddenly, the young lady notices a strange scar on his neck. It looks like a monster bite. The young man says that he has had this wound for a long time. That is why his master made him grow his hair long. The main character recalls that the novel mentioned how he used to have long hair. And now she understands the real reason. The girl thinks about how cruel this novel is to young Damien. It's hard to even imagine how cruel. The young lady asks if his long hair bothers him. She lifts it up and realizes that living inside this novel will not be easy for her. The girl also thinks about how handsome he is. And in fact, he is even more handsome than she imagined. But the main character quickly realizes that now is not the time to think about that. She puts her hand on his forehead and asks if he is in pain anywhere. He seems to have a fever. The guy replies that everything is fine, he's just a little hot. The girl says with relief that, thank God, she is glad that he does not have a cold. After that, the girl leads him to the bedroom. Opening the door, she quietly says that from now on, they will sleep here. One of the guys in the room wakes up and sleepily asks if it's Ellie. And who's next to her? The girl whispers to Betty to speak more quietly, otherwise Tommy will wake up. She assures him that everything is fine so he can go back to sleep. The main character looks at the empty beds and realizes that this is great news. Carson's gang isn't here, although who knows what will happen next. She points to the beds and says that her bed is by the window in the middle and Damien's bed is by the door. In general, they should sleep separately. But since it's their first night together, the girl suggests that he sleep with her. The young man is surprised and asks if he really has to sleep there. The girl simply tells him to lie down quickly because she really wants to sleep. The young man quietly complies with her request. The main character thinks that maybe this is the first time in his life he has slept in a real bed. That's why he looks so awkward. Elida covers him with a blanket. But when she gets closer, she smells something strange, although she also secretly washed herself in the director's room. And there was definitely nothing with that smell there. At that moment, the young lady realizes that she now looks like a real pervert. So she quickly wishes him sweet dreams and suggests he go to sleep. The young man remains silent. Then the girl asks if he would like to wish her the same. The guy quietly says that he also wishes her sweet dreams, and he covers himself more tightly with the blanket. The main character smiles and wishes him a good night. After that, she closes her eyes. Meanwhile, the young man watches her and thinks that this girl is simply an incredible person. He wonders if she cares about him because she feels guilty. After all, he is a slave and he has always had to stay away from people. But now he remembers everything the young lady did for him, and for the first time he thinks that maybe he's not so repulsive after all. He also remembers her bright, beautiful eyes. But he still understands that he shouldn't get his hopes up. And suddenly he begins to dream something. When the young man turns around in his sleep, he sees a monster in front of him. At that moment, someone giggles and asks why he is frozen. After all, a slave must entertain his master, so let him fight the monster quickly. The woman says that she has even brought him something so that he can win. Therefore, he will definitely not lose. The boy understands that no one will ever help him, and if he doesn't put the monster to sleep forever, the beast will take his life. He realizes that he must pull himself together and come to his senses. Otherwise, everything will end very badly. At this moment, the main character tries to wake the young man up. And finally, he opens his eyes. Alita asks if he is all right. Maybe he had a nightmare. Or maybe he did catch a cold after all. The girl puts her hand on his forehead and says that he doesn't have a fever, but he is covered in sweat. The young lady asks again if he is all right, and the guy is still trying to come to his senses after sleep. When he sees Alita in front of him, he realizes that until yesterday, no one had ever cared about him. Not even himself. But this young lady is completely different. The girl says she will bring a wet towel and is about to leave. However, the young man grabs her dress and asks her to wait. He says that he is fine and that he is not in any pain. Alita asks if this is true, but she still asks him not to overexert himself. After that, she gently strokes his head. The young man thinks it's a little strange, but when he's next to Ellie, he feels ticklish and warm. It's as if he has swallowed the sun. And for a moment, he even thinks he should have said that it hurt. But suddenly, there is a loud crash. The door bursts open and a young man with red hair rushes into the room. He looks really angry and asks sharply if Alita did all this on purpose. After all, that jerk wasn't in the warehouse. And because of her, the teacher caught him. The young man angrily asks if she even understands what he had to go through. And it's all because of that guy. Then the main character calmly asks why he blames Damien for everything. She says that the real fool is the one who fell for the deception. The girl also notices that the clock has struck, which means the teachers will be back soon. But at that moment, the boy rushes at the young lady and yells at her, asking how she could have done such a thing to him. Suddenly, the door opens and the teacher enters the room. She asks loudly what is going on and why the boy still hasn't learned to behave properly. The young man, in shock, turns to her and says that he didn't start it. After all, it all started with Alita, and she is to blame for everything. He hastily adds that the two boys behind them heard everything. But the teacher just asks irritably what nonsense he is talking about. After all, he is the one who starts fights every day. That is why the aristocrats are not interested in them at all. Carson asks her to believe him and says that yesterday they went to the warehouse precisely because of Alita. The teacher asks if this is true. The girl calmly replies that Damien was very ill yesterday and had a high fever. That's why she went to get medicine. But Carson kept repeating that all the teachers had gone to the casino. The young man cries out indignantly and asks when he ever said such a thing. The girl, with tears in her eyes, says that it's true. And could the teachers really leave the children alone and go to the casino? That's just impossible. The woman is momentarily lost for words and doesn't know how to respond. The young lady realizes that now is the perfect time to further confuse the situation. She turns to the teacher and asks if the warehouse doors were really open last night. The woman replies that the director gave her a task to do yesterday. Therefore, she was the last one to close the warehouse. The teacher begins to recall the events of the previous night. She recalls how one man was worried and asked if everything would be all right. He thought they might get caught, but the woman assured him that everything was fine. After all, there was no better place for secret meetings. At this point, the girl says that she definitely left the keys in the principal's office, so the warehouse couldn't have been opened, but it seems she lost the key somewhere. The girl apologizes guiltily. The teacher quickly says that everything is fine and she shouldn't worry so much. However, the little girl starts crying and says that it is her fault. Because of her carelessness, everything happened, so she will go with Carson to the principal. The woman abruptly exclaims that it is not necessary. Then she stumbles and does not finish her sentence. After that, she turns abruptly to the boy and starts scolding him. She asks what casino he is talking about and why he is lying. After all, something bad could have happened to Damien because of him. The young man cries out in despair that he never did such a thing, and that Alita is just lying now. But the woman orders him to stop making excuses and follow her. The boy continues to shout that it really wasn't him. When he is taken away, the main character realizes that now he definitely won't bother Damien for a while. After that, the young lady turns to Betty and Tommy. She says that they need to hurry downstairs, otherwise the teachers will start scolding them. They should wash up quickly and go. The girl immediately runs up to the young lady and asks what will happen to her. The girl replies that she will come down soon too. The little girl nods and asks her sister not to be late. As they leave, the young lady looks at Damien and quietly says that the teachers really weren't there yesterday. Then the main character adds that she promised to protect him from those boys. And now she has simply taken revenge on them for him. The boy asks in surprise if it was really for him, and why. The girl calmly sits down on the bed. She says that adults should protect children. Although among the adults she has met here, there are almost none like that. But the girl looks at Damien and says that such a person will definitely appear in his life. someone he can trust. The young man quietly asks what will happen if he trusts someone. The girl replies that then he will be able to become happier. The boy is silent. At that moment, a young man with red hair runs into the room and says that a lead needs to come down immediately. The director has already woken up. And if they delay, they will surely be scolded. Therefore, they must hurry. The main character immediately runs out with the young man. And he, looking at her, tries to understand the strange feeling inside. Carson is angry at this moment and tells himself that he will not let it go so easily. Because of them, he ended up alone in this dirty room. But another question torments him most of all. Why did the girl suddenly take Damien's side and care for him as if he were her own brother? She didn't even know him before. But he is sure that this will not last long. Elida will still belong only to him. Meanwhile, the girl is cooking soup in the kitchen. She tastes it and decides that it turned out quite well. Then she turns to Damien and asks him to stir the soup with a ladle. The young man does so silently. The main character notices that he has hardly been responding to her lately. She begins to wonder if her lie is still bothering him. After all, he has endured violence all his life and is used to it. But at the same time, he has never been faced with deception before. Perhaps that is why he is now confused. Elida cautiously asks if he is still upset about what happened that morning. The guy is surprised and asks what she is talking about. The girl explains that she means the moment when she deceived the man. The young man is about to say that this is not the case. But the main character interrupts him and asks him not to worry too much. She says that revenge must be well thought out. Yes, she lied, but it's still better. It's better than getting caught herself. And no matter what his past was like, she wants him to stop suffering because of it in the future. After that, the main character asks if he understands. The guy realizes that he has never heard anything like this before. After all, before that, he could only survive by following his master's orders. Now the guy understands one important thing. In the future, he will never lose to anyone again. And just as she protected him, one day he would protect her too. In any way he could. Meanwhile, the director sits on the sofa and complains that her head is splitting. Although, as she says, she didn't drink that much at the casino. Staggering slightly, she gets up from the sofa and decides she needs something to eat to finally come to her senses. But when the woman enters the kitchen, she is a little surprised. Why is this slave working here now? After all, if she hadn't lost her money back then, and if she hadn't drunk so much, all this could have been avoided. One of the women then asked the director of the orphanage to look after the child until she returned to pick him up. That way, she could pay off her debt. She told everyone else that he was just a new child, but in reality, he was a slave who had an owner, and he would soon come for him. And if the owner found out that she had forced the boy to work, he would definitely seize on that, and that would mean serious trouble for her. So she looks at Damien. But at that moment, she hears shouting. The teacher asks loudly if Carson is coming back, and when he even left the room. However, the young man just yells at the woman to let him go. After all, he is not guilty of anything. The headmistress comes closer and asks what is going on. The teacher explains that, according to her colleagues, this child has been causing problems lately, and he stole bread from the storeroom. The young man immediately shouts that this is a lie. He didn't steal anything and got the bread from someone else. But the headmistress sharply orders him to be quiet. After all, this is not the first time he has stolen something, and after all that, he still dares to make a fuss. The woman coldly says that he needs additional education. Then she orders the teacher to leave the boy with her. The teacher immediately agrees. When the headmistress grabs him by the hand, the boy thinks in horror that this cannot be happening. He cannot be solely responsible for all this. Therefore, the young man desperately shouts that he was not the only one there. He says that Damien was also in the warehouse. He just managed to escape. But the main character calmly replies that this is not true. Damien wasn't in the warehouse that day. He was sick and stayed in the room with her the whole time. Carson gets angry and asks why Ellie keeps lying. After all, she was the one who sent him to the warehouse. Then the young lady looks at the director and says that she knows very well how many children suffer from his bullying. The woman looks at the girl and remembers how she returned to the orphanage. Then the little girl quietly asks why she is back here again. The director is surprised and asks if she really doesn't understand. After all, it was all because of her despicable mother. The woman recalled with irritation how many times she had been brought back. The director understands that this girl has always been quiet and inconspicuous, but now she has come forward herself. So something is clearly wrong here. At that moment, the red-haired boy shouts again and asks the principal to believe him. It's all a lie. The woman just says irritably that she is tired of it. She orders the teacher to deal with the boy herself. She didn't give the newly arrived child any work at all. The teacher agrees, and the principal walks away angrily. The blonde woman turns to Damien and tells him to go to the dining room first. She needs to stay here and continue working. The boy remains silent but clings tightly to the young lady's dress. She gently tells him that they will finish cooking soon, and she will come to him right away. The girl understands that the director does not allow Damien to work, not because he singles him out, but because he has a master. But for the other children, everything looks completely different, and that could cause unnecessary suspicion. So the young lady quietly asks if Damien can wait for her a little longer, but the young man still does not let go of her dress. Then the teacher comes up and tells the boy to go with her. The red-haired boy whispers that he will probably be scolded. And this teacher hits very hard. Betty quietly says that he must be very scared. The main character looks at the two of them and realizes that their misunderstanding is actually for the best. In reality, they are simply trying to keep Damien away from any work. The girl decides that she needs to finish her business quickly and go to Damien. A little later, the guy is already sitting in the dining room. He is settled in the far corner of the room. The young man realizes that he doesn't like sitting alone, but he also doesn't want Ellie to start hating him because of him. Suddenly, he hears footsteps. He looks up and sees the main character in front of him. The young lady smiles and asks if he was waiting for her. Then she suggests they go eat. Damien asks if she has finished all her work. The girl replies that she has. Then the young man cautiously asks if he can eat with her. The young lady immediately agrees and says that the food is especially delicious today, but suddenly, someone tells them to wait. The seat to the right of Elida is taken. The main character realizes that Tommy is so excited because Carson is not there. She asks him to give up his seat to Damien, at least for today. After all, he has only just arrived. But Tommy stubbornly replies that he doesn't want to. Then the young lady smiles and says that really cool guys know how to give up their seats to others. The young man immediately perks up and asks if that's true. Then he proudly says that he will give up his seat, but only today, because he's a cool guy. The main character smiles quietly and thinks that Tommy is still just a child. Then she tells Damien to sit next to her, and he calmly sits down. Tommy looks closely at the guy and notices that he seems very kind and even a little naive. But suddenly, a loud cry rings out in the dining room. Everyone turns around and sees that it is Betty. The girl is crying and says that her doll fell into the soup and is now wet. The main character asks Damien and Tommy to eat quietly and promises to return soon. The girl picks up the little girl and gently calms her down. She tells Betty not to worry. The doll is only slightly wet, so she just needs to wash that little piece and everything will be fine. The nurse will definitely clean the doll for Betty. Damien silently watches as the main character walks away. Then he turns his gaze to Tommy. The red-haired young man extends his hand and says he is pleased to meet him. It seems that the young man has already become close with Ellie, so he suggests that they get along from now on. But the young man with black hair simply turns away. Tommy realizes that he seems to be afraid of people. He says that he is also a friend of the young lady, so it's better for them to get along. Damien quietly asks if the guy really considers himself her friend. He confidently replies that he does. He even says that he is Ellie's closest friend. After these words, the young man with black hair looks at him coldly. Tommy is visibly frightened by this look. After a while, the main character returns to the room. She immediately turns to Damien and asks if he is eating. The young man quietly nods and continues eating his portion. The main character then turns her gaze to Tommy. She asks what happened to him. At that moment, Damien glares at the guy again, and he quickly replies that nothing happened. But the thought flashes through Tommy's mind that he was very wrong. This young man is not naive at all. He is more like a wild animal. Therefore, he thinks that Ellie is probably just being deceived. A little later, the main character watches as the young man gets out of the shower. She looks at him and thinks that his cheeks are literally glowing, and she wants so much to touch them. The guy looks at her, and the young lady realizes that she needs to restrain herself. After all, he has only just begun to trust her. The girl gently asks if he feels better after his shower. Then she asks him to come closer. The young man calmly approaches her. Then the main character gently wipes his face. And again she thinks that no matter how much she looks at him, he is very handsome. Perhaps his hair is getting in the way. And she even wants to cut it. But any aristocrat who sees such a face will surely want to take him in. This cannot be allowed to happen. After all, Duke Schuitz is to become Damien's adoptive father. This means that this beauty must be hidden somehow. After that, the young lady suggests that he go to bed. They enter the room together. The girl points to one of the beds and says that from today he will sleep on it. The young man quietly asks if he will be sleeping alone. The main character is surprised and asks what happened. Does he not like it? But the guy looks a little upset. The girl begins to think that maybe he wants to say something. However, Damien simply turns away and approaches the bed. After that, he lies down. Ellie realizes that too much has happened today. He is probably just tired. So she lies down in her bed. Before falling asleep, she quietly addresses Damien and wishes him a good night and pleasant dreams. The young man is silent for a moment. Then he quietly calls the young lady by name and also wishes her sweet dreams. The girl is very surprised. After all, this is the first time the boy has called her by her name. And she feels so warm inside. Just a few words from this little boy have made her incredibly happy. A little later, in the middle of the night, the young lady suddenly wakes up. She realizes she needs to go to the bathroom. But when she looks at the bed next to her, she notices that no one is there. The young lady asks in surprise where Damien has gone. The little girl with purple hair quietly replies. She says that her brother Carson has returned. Hearing this, the main character is very surprised. At this time, Damien is standing on the street, and Carson is angry and yells, asking if he even understands how much he had to go through because of this guy. He looks at him and says he can see how proud he is of Ellie's care, but in reality, he means nothing to her. Damien glares at Carson. Carson just smiles and asks why the guy is looking at him like that, and what he's going to do about it. The brunette continues to stare at him silently. The young lady's words come to mind, that he will no longer suffer because of them. The young man is about to attack these scoundrels, but the red-haired guy suddenly shouts loudly. He says that Ellie just feels sorry for weaklings like him, small, helpless children who cannot defend themselves. After these words, the brunette stops abruptly, and the red-haired young man continues to shout that he is just as weak. And that is precisely why the young lady cares for him. It is not at all because he is special to her. At that moment, the guy remembers their first meeting. Back then, the girl said that he just looked weak. He also remembers how, back when he was a slave, he heard countless times that he was useless and stupid. But now he doesn't understand why it was Carson's words about him being nobody to Ellie that hurt him so much. It's as if he's sinking into a swamp and slowly burning from the inside. At that moment, the red-haired young man raises his foot to kick him. He yells at the guy to know his place. After all, he's acting too boldly for a slave. After that, he says again that the guy seems to have misunderstood everything just because they live in the same place. Then he grabs the guy and throws him into the lake. He says mockingly that he should cool his head a little there. Falling into the icy water, the young man only manages to whisper Ellie's name. Carson is surprised for a moment. Suddenly, he sees that the girl has caught the guy, and the main character at that moment. She turns sharply toward them and furiously asks what he is doing. The girl remembers how she ran here as fast as she could. She knew that Carson always pushed children he didn't like into the lake, and in such a cold winter, Damien could be in serious danger. As she ran, all she could think about was whether he was okay. Now she angrily asks if Carson has completely lost his mind. She knew before that he was abnormal, but now she doesn't understand how he could do that to this child. At this moment, the red-haired young man himself doesn't understand what is happening and why Ellie is behaving this way towards him. If you think about it, everything changed at some point. Instead of joining him in mocking others, Ellie began to back away and turn against him. He doesn't understand why the girl is so kind to this boy. And who is he anyway? At this moment, the young lady turns to Damien and says that when they return, she will definitely take care of his treatment. Carson responds irritably that he didn't like any of this from the start. Then he suddenly lunges at the young man with his fists. He yells that everyone around him has become strange because of him and demands an explanation of what Ellie is doing. But the main character quickly grabs Damien and jumps aside. At that moment, Carson sees only his reflection in the water and, losing his balance, falls straight into the lake. The other guys immediately start to worry and ask if he's okay and if he can get up. Ellie coldly says that they need to know their limits because this guy is behaving disgustingly. After these words, the young lady turns around and leaves, saying that she doesn't even want to talk to him anymore. The girl pulls Damien along with her. He sees her this angry for the first time and doesn't understand why she is so upset. Maybe it's because he's weak, or because he annoys her. At this moment, the main character turns to Damien. She asks why he just stood there motionless and why he didn't even try to resist. The guy realizes that the girl is really angry with him. He quietly asks if she thinks he's pathetic. Maybe she just feels sorry for him and that's why she cares so much. The main character asks in surprise what he is talking about. But the young man replies that if that is the case, then she should not worry about him anymore. He says that he is used to being treated this way and that nothing will happen to him. But at that moment, the girl grabs him sharply by the shoulders. She asks what nonsense he is talking about and whether he really thinks that all this time she cared for him only out of pity. Ellie apologizes for making him think that. She also apologizes for saying that he looks weak. She says she should have apologized right away. And now she honestly admits that she doesn't think he's weak at all. On the contrary, she thinks he's stronger than many people. The young man quietly replies that it's not that he wanted to hear those words. It's just that before, he was sure that the girl only cared for him out of pity. Therefore, her words about him being strong seem strange to him, and the young man with tears in his eyes quietly utters Ellie's name. The main character is shocked and wonders if she said something wrong. But the guy explains that he thought he was annoying her. The young lady is surprised and asks why he decided that. The young man replies that he just felt it. The girl gently says that if you endure it all the time, it only gets worse. So let him look at her. Then the young lady asks him to stop crying. But the guy asks again if she hates him. Ellie is surprised and says she has no reason to hate him. Then the boy replies that she avoided his gaze. The girl asks when that was. The young man says that she herself talked about pain in her heart. The young lady recalls the moment when she saw him taking off his shirt and said that her heart was about to jump out of her chest. Now she explains that it was not because of hatred at all. It was simply for a completely different reason. But the young man still thinks that, as he expected, Ellie hates him. Then the main character panics and says that she will never avoid him again. The guy cautiously asks if this is true. The young lady immediately promises this, sealing her words with her pinky finger, and asks if he believes her now. The guy wants to say something, but the girl notices that his tears have stopped and sighs quietly. Then the young man says that from now on he will always hold Ellie's hand. And even during meals, he will sit next to her. The young lady smiles and says that's fine. Let them really hold hands and sit next to each other in the dining room. Then she tells him seriously that if anyone bullies him again, he should fight back immediately. He shouldn't just take the blows and let others treat him badly. And if something is bothering him, he should talk about it right away. He shouldn't suffer alone. After that, they make another promise on their pinky fingers. Then they go back inside. At that moment, the young man realizes that Ellie's words were indeed true. Thanks to her, he felt happiness for the first time. He remembers how the girl said that one day a person would appear who would help him. Someone who can be trusted. And then he will definitely be happy. Now the guy thinks that if this is misfortune, then he definitely wouldn't feel so good, even despite the tears. So from now on, he wants to be a little greedy. At this time, the Duke is putting someone into an eternal sleep somewhere. After that, he calmly says that they have wasted their time on useless information. He adds that now he and Auntie are leaving and moving on to the next area. Meanwhile, the main character finishes treating the young man. She says that everything is finished, so now they can go to sleep. But suddenly, the young man grabs her dress. The girl is surprised and asks what happened. Then he quietly asks permission to sleep next to Ellie. He says he keeps having terrible dreams. Ellie replies that the bed is too narrow and they will be uncomfortable, but the young man asks with tears in his eyes if he really can't. The main character realizes that there is nothing wrong with that. After all, it's not such a big deal. The young man lies down next to her on the bed. The girl notices that his mood has improved significantly. She thinks that even though she is only a minor character, she is still glad that she was able to help him. And she says that now they are, like, brother and sister. But the young man immediately replies that he is not Ellie's younger brother. The main character smiles and says that he is only 11, while she is already 13. But the young man pushes her away slightly and looks away sadly. Ellie begins to wonder if he is angry. After all, even though he is small, he is a strong main character, and he may not like being treated like a child. After that, the girl says that she was just joking, so Damien shouldn't be angry. She assures him that she actually meant to say something completely different. She wanted to admit that she feels warm because she is sleeping next to him. Hearing this, the guy is a little embarrassed, turns away slightly, and quietly replies that he feels the same way. The main character just smiles and thinks to herself how cute he is. After that, she suggests going to bed because it is indeed late. They wish each other good night. The guy closes his eyes and soon falls asleep quietly. And then he begins to have a dream. In it, a young lady appears, who puts wine on him and says that absolutely everything suits him because he is incredibly handsome. The young man thanks the girl and admits that it is thanks to her that he feels truly happy. The next day, the main character remembers his words and says that he told her he had a good dream. But then the girl asks anxiously if he is in pain because his temperature has risen. The guy calmly replies that everything is fine. He says that he is not in pain at all. However, the main character does not believe him and notes that his voice does not sound like he is telling the truth. After that, she asks him to tell her honestly when exactly he got sick. The guy replies that it started last night. Hearing this, the main character wonders why he didn't tell her anything. Then she realizes that she herself was sleeping so soundly and peacefully and begins to scold herself, thinking what an idiot she is. Ellie approaches Tommy and asks how Damien is feeling now. He replies that his temperature is quite high and he will have to spend several days in bed. The main character reminds the guy that he heard everything and that today he just needs to lie quietly. The young man immediately asks what will happen to Ellie. Tommy replies that she will still have to work. If she doesn't go out, the director will definitely be angry. At that moment, the guy can only think about having to part with Ellie again. The young lady reassures him and says that he knows how well she does her job. She will finish quickly and then make him some soup. So he should just close his eyes and count to 100. The guy agrees, but asks her to come back as soon as possible. He asks if she promises to do so. The girl confidently replies that of course she will. To herself, she thinks again how cute he is and says that she will definitely come back. Before leaving, she asks Tommy to keep an eye on this guy. But at that moment, the young man just glances at him with a look full of hidden menace. Tommy thinks to himself what a sly fox she is. Meanwhile, the main character is already cleaning the director's room and realizes that she needs her to leave for a moment. Only then will she be able to take the medicine. But this woman clearly has no intention of leaving the office. What's more, she's in a particularly bad mood today. At one point, the director turns to Ellie and sharply asks if she can clean up faster. The young lady immediately agrees. At the same time, she understands that if she makes even one mistake, she may be punished. Therefore, she decides to start cleaning outside first. Meanwhile, the director begins to complain that despite the large number of children, there is practically no money left in the orphanage. She looks at one of the nightstands and realizes that the only way to cover the debts is to sell one of the mana stones. Mana stones are special minerals capable of accumulating mana. People who do not possess their own magic use them when casting spells. But mana stones themselves are rare and very valuable minerals. Poppy seeds are needed to create them, so these stones are sold at incredibly high prices. The woman takes one of the stones in her hand and thinks for a moment. But then she realizes that it is impossible. She has collected them for so long, and with such difficulty, that she will never sell them. The headmistress glances irritably at the girl and thinks that if she weren't the daughter of a thief, then it could be sold for a huge amount of money, and all debts could be paid off immediately. At that moment, one of the teachers enters the office and addresses the director. She reminds him that, as she said earlier, because of Duke Shuetz, the number of aristocrats willing to adopt orphans has greatly decreased. The woman puts the stone back and says that everything is happening exactly as she expected. Things simply cannot go on like this. Ever since Duke Shuetz began searching for adopted children, he has been visiting aristocrats and asking strange questions. He asks if the child has black hair, and then says that his eyes are not blue. The aristocrats are so frightened by such visits that many have simply stopped adopting children in order to avoid encountering the Duke. The headmistress asks if Malin really heard everything correctly. The girl replies that Day has already spread rumors that the Duke's son is here now. The headmistress says she did a great job. But the girl still looks a little confused and cautiously turns to the director. She says that if they deceive the Duke and sell him another child, and the truth comes out, what will happen to them then? After all, this is not about an ordinary person, but about the Duke of Shuetz himself. But the woman just waves her hand and tells her not to talk nonsense. The Duke has never seen this child in person, so he simply cannot determine whether he is real or not. Therefore, she only needs to do what she is asked. The girl agrees, and at that moment, the main character realizes that the Duke is already on his way to rescue Damien. At this time, the man is in the house of other aristocrats. He has already put many servants to sleep forever, and coldly says that all this is simply unbearable. Then he asks if they really thought they could stop him with the scent of medicinal herbs. The man falls to his knees and begs for forgiveness, saying that they have committed a grave sin. The woman next to him cries out in despair and begs him to show mercy just this once. She says that they did not know that this man was Duke Shuetz, and again asks him to spare them. One of the young men turns to the Duke and asks him to hear them out first. He asks if they really came here just to plunge everyone into eternal sleep. But the Duke coldly replies that these people have confessed their sin and are ready to pay with their lives, and with his character, he simply cannot ignore such a request. He then adds that if they do not want to fall into an eternal sleep, they must immediately reveal the child's whereabouts. The woman suddenly realizes that the slave was actually the Duke's son. Frightened, she says that the child is now in an orphanage. She explains that the orphanage is run by a friend of hers. She adds that she simply thought it would be better for the child to live there than in such a harsh place. But the Duke only raises his sword and coldly asks if they really want to fall into an eternal sleep so badly. At that moment, someone addresses the Duke. He stops and asks what has happened. The young man says that these two don't seem to be lying. A few days ago, he received a message. The message said that the child they are looking for is in a nearby orphanage. The Duke asks irritably why they are only reporting this now, when they have already searched all the orphanages in the entire empire. The man explains that this place is only called an orphanage. In reality, orphans are taken there and forced to do the dirtiest and hardest work. Hearing this, the Duke sharply puts his sword to the young man's throat. The young man hastily says that there are many children who are adopted for money and effectively sold, so he wanted to confirm the information first and only then tell the Duke. But the Duke coldly replies that he wants to put this guy to sleep forever right now. The young man immediately begins to beg for forgiveness. The Duke turns his gaze to the man lying on the ground and asks if they sent the child to the holy orphanage. The man panics and shouts that it is true. After that, the Duke says that they will be punished later. In the meantime, the young man should send a message to the orphanage that they are going to visit right now. But then he suddenly remembers something and calmly adds that they need to deal with these two first. After saying this, he puts them into an eternal sleep. Meanwhile, the shelter director shouts irritably that they are already on the verge of trouble, and now sick children have appeared. She continues to be indignant and says that it is not surprising to feel unwell after falling into the lake in such cold weather. The woman realizes that the Duke will arrive soon, and it is absolutely impossible to show him a sick child, so she decides to at least give him some cheap medicine to make the child look healthy. And although she feels sorry, she will have to sell at least one mana stone. However, when the woman looks at her collection, she notices with horror that one of the stones is missing. She immediately asks how this could have happened. Meanwhile, the main character calmly wringes out a wet rag. The girl is worried and thinks about how high the young man's temperature is. She notices that even the wet towel has become warm. so she says she will go and wet it again with cold water. At that moment, the boy quietly addresses Ellie. He asks her not to leave because he doesn't want to be alone. Ellie replies that he has a very high temperature, but the young man says he doesn't care. Ellie thinks he will fall asleep soon, so she decides to wait a little while beside him. Then she realizes that he is feeling a little better thanks to the energy of the mana stone she stole. Who would have thought that the young man would get so sick? The girl remembers that Carson is also in bad shape. But Damien's body was weak from the start, and to be honest, Carson and his condition shouldn't concern her at all. At that moment, the boy leans slightly against the young lady's hand and quietly says that her hand is so cool. Ellie can't help but wonder how anyone could have tormented such a kind and innocent child. After a while, the girl notices that he has finally fallen asleep. She decides to quickly go and come back, and on the way she even thinks about grabbing something light to eat. But suddenly, the woman turns to the girl and asks what she is doing there. She repeats the question again, and the main character wonders what the director is doing there. The girl calmly turns around and says that Damien is sick, so she is taking care of him. And now she was just going to change the water. However, the woman suddenly pulls a magic stone out of her pocket and coldly asks what it is. The young lady smiles, realizing that she was wrong to hope that the woman would not notice the stone that had been lying in the corner. She pretends not to understand and says that Carson was just carrying it around. But the woman just replies irritably that now the girl is stealing too. She asks indignantly how she can be so brazen and whether she really takes after her mother. The young lady asks why she is saying such things. The woman replies that it is obvious. The girl promised to live quietly, so they left her here, but in the end, she repaid their kindness with theft. Then the woman declares that they will use this opportunity to correct her bad habit. She already swings her arm, and the main character closes her eyes. But after the blow, the woman suddenly notices that Damien is standing in front of the girl. She is even surprised for a moment. The young man breathes heavily and tells her not to dare hit her. He warns that if she hits Ellie, he won't let it go. The headmistress asks irritably what he is doing and why he is interfering. At that moment, she remembers the words of the woman who once gave her this child. She was told never to try to hit this boy, because if he feels threatened, he will attack regardless of who is in front of him. At that moment, one of the teachers enters the office and addresses the headmistress. She announces that a message has arrived, saying that Duke Schuetz will soon arrive. The woman cries out in shock and tells the children to quickly tidy up, get changed, and bring all the children with black hair and blue eyes to her office immediately. She adds that they are not ready yet. They will talk to the girl later, because then she will have to answer for what she has done. But the main character grabs the woman by her dress and asks what will happen to Damien. She reminds her that he also has black hair and blue eyes. The woman coldly asks if she really needs to show such a child to the Duke and disgrace herself. The girl wants to object, but at that moment the young man begins to lose strength and literally collapses. The main character, in shock, picks him up and immediately asks if he is hurt. The director just smiles and says that the sick child needs to rest, so the girl had better take care of him. The boy quietly turns to the young lady, and she confidently says that everything will be fine, and that she will definitely help him meet his family. Meanwhile, the Duke is already on his way to the orphanage, where he is met by the teachers. The man immediately notices that this place is far from the city center, and looks almost completely isolated. It is practically impossible to get here without horses and a carriage. On the one hand, you could say that it is a peaceful environment for children, but now he is interested in something else. He asks where the director is, because he had announced his visit in advance. One of the women replies that the message came too suddenly, so the director found out about it late and is now on her way here. She asks him to wait a little. The Duke asks about the child. One of the teachers immediately remembers the director's order to keep her mouth shut, so she understands that she cannot answer honestly. The Duke looks closely at the nannies and notices the complete disorder around him. He coldly tells them to stop all this because he will find the child himself. After saying this, he heads inside the orphanage and says that it is the worst time of year and that small children are living in such a cold place. The young man next to him quietly replies that he thinks so too. The Duke coldly says that if their words about Clyde's child turn out to be a lie, the young man must deal with everyone immediately. The young man agrees without hesitation. At that moment, the man turns the corner and the main character accidentally bumps right into him. She immediately complains that she is hurt. The Duke pauses for a moment, wondering if it is one of the children. He leans toward her and apologizes calmly. Then he gently asks if she can get up. The young lady smiles and thanks him. The Duke feels a surprisingly bright energy emanating from the girl, but she herself says again that she is still in pain and finds it difficult to get up. The girl asks curiously who they are. The young man walking beside the Duke leans toward her and realizes that she seems to have no idea who is standing in front of her. He is about to say something, but the little girl asks if they have come to adopt a child. The man calmly replies that this is true. The young lady nods and says that now she understands, then adds that the children have been gathered in the principal's office. She also says that he is looking for a child with black hair and blue eyes. That is why 5 such children have been gathered there. The Duke notes that the principal is still there after all. The young man next to him says that she was clearly stalling for time, pretending not to be there, although he does not yet understand why. The man simply replies that, who knows? But he is already becoming uncomfortable with the whole situation, after which he turns back to the little girl. He thanks her for the hint. The girl bows politely and says it's nothing, then says goodbye. The Duke says it's time for them to go. The young man agrees, but when he turns around, he thinks the girl is very strange. It is the first time he has seen someone who has come face to face with the Duke like this and not even cried. However, he remembers that he once saw someone similar, someone who looked at the Duke and didn't even blink. But that was long ago. Meanwhile, the director of the orphanage meets the Duke and thanks him for visiting their orphanage. The man immediately asks who these children are. The woman points to the crying children and says that they all have black hair and blue eyes, just like he is looking for, so the child he is looking for must be among them. Then she turns to the children and pretends to be surprised. She asks why they are crying so much, because they are not usually like that. The Duke remembers that Clyde talked about his son's mannerisms. If the boy is here, the stone should react. But, as expected, nothing happens. After that, he turns to Ante and says that it all seems like a lie, so let him put this woman into an eternal sleep. Hearing this, the headmistress is truly shocked and does not understand what the Duke is saying. She begins to scream desperately and begs him to spare her. The woman claims that the child he is looking for is definitely one of these four. The Duke thinks about it, because she says four. At that moment, he remembers the words of the child he met earlier. The girl said that he was looking for a child with black hair and blue eyes, and that there were 5 such children there. The Duke calmly says that one child is missing. The woman asks in confusion what he just said. The man silently draws his sword from its sheath and coldly asks if she is going to pretend until the very end. He puts his sword to her throat and demands to know where the child she is hiding is. He warns her that if she tries to deceive him again, she will lose her life instantly. Meanwhile, the main character hears a noise outside. She realizes from the sounds that the Duke will soon arrive. Everything happens exactly as it did in the original and exactly as she wanted, but suddenly, the girl is overcome by a strange feeling. For some reason, she feels a little sad, even though she understands that this is a good thing for Damien. Then the young lady turns to the boy and tells him that he will soon no longer be sick. The young man asks in surprise what she is talking about. The girl reminds him that she promised to help him meet his family. At that very moment, the Duke rushes into the room. The young man is stunned, wondering if he really does have a family. He also tries to understand who this man is. Ante, watching the Duke, notices something unusual. For the first time in a long time, he sees the Duke showing such strong emotions. This has not happened since the lady fell into an eternal sleep. Ante was sure he would never see anything like it again. Meanwhile, the man slowly approaches the boy. He realizes that he has heard about the child but did not expect him to be so thin. Then he notices a girl standing nearby, and suddenly he realizes that this is the very child he recently encountered in the hallway. But at that moment, the young man jumps up from the bed and stands in front of the young lady, protecting her. The main character cries out in alarm. She says he mustn't get up. But the young man looks at the Duke and tells him not to look at Ellie like that. He declares that he will not stand aside if anyone tries to torment Ellie. The Duke remarks that this kid reminds him of a wild beast. Then he calmly asks who the young man intends to protect with such a weak body. And at that moment, something strange happens. The Duke notices that the stone begins to react to the young man's mana, and then he realizes that he has finally found him. Standing before him is Clyde's son. At that moment, the boy begins to lose strength due to high fever and severe exhaustion. But the Duke calmly says that there is nothing to worry about. He has already returned the mana that was taken from the boy, and this, on the contrary, will help strengthen his endurance. The main character notices that the boy's temperature has begun to drop, and the Duke calmly says that it seems they have found the child. He then adds that he now wants to hear an explanation as to why the child is in such a state. He warns that if he hears a lie, it would be better for them to bite their tongues and calmly accept their descent into eternal sleep. One of the women hastily says that at first they were simply following the director's request and dealing with the adoption paperwork. The main character realizes that everything is happening exactly as described in the book, and this man really does have a frightening talent for intimidation. He is able to make people obey with just one word. The girl involuntarily begins to feel a little afraid. Ante addresses the Duke and says that he warned him. People fear him even more than ghosts. He asks him to at least soften his gaze a little, because even the nannies have run away. He adds that this is why the child fell. The Duke calmly replies that the boy fell because he was ill, but the knight says that this is unlikely. Ante continues to say that the Lord always makes a frightening impression. Therefore, the little Duke may not want him to be his guardian at all. After that, he asks if the Duke has thought about it. But the man is only interested in whether the boy has fallen asleep. Then he moves closer to the young man. The Duke says that a sick child cannot be left lying on the floor. He adds that while Ante changes the towel. The knight immediately agrees and quickly runs off to do as he is asked. The main character says that she will do the rest herself. She begins to take care of the boy, while the Duke watches her closely and says that she behaves as if she knew exactly who he was looking for. He reminds her that this is his first time at the shelter and asks how the girl could have known that. The young lady immediately realizes that he is testing her. She needs to answer correctly, because if she makes a mistake, everything could end up just like in the original story, and she would find herself out on the street. But she can't lie to him either, so she decides to tell him what she really knows. The girl says she accidentally overheard the director's conversation. She asked her to spread rumors and to send a message to the Duke that the child with black hair and blue eyes is right here. The man asks if that means she deliberately told him about the 5 children. The young lady is a little surprised. She realizes that if he guesses that she approached him on purpose, he will begin to suspect her. But he is not the type to easily notice an awkward lie. So the girl calmly says that this is exactly how it is. She thought that Damien also had black hair and blue eyes, which meant he could be that child. The man asks why she didn't take him to where the boy was right away. The girl replies that she wanted the Duke to walk around the orphanage himself. And I saw with my own eyes what was happening here. At that moment, Auntie brings a towel, and the girl says that the Duke has probably already noticed it himself. The caregivers do not care about the children at all. The young lady explains that the children do almost all the work themselves, and the caregivers simply leave the orphanage every night. They go to the casino, gamble, and have fun. That is why she wanted the Duke to see for himself the terrible condition of the orphanage. At that moment, the man suddenly sees in the girl the features of his late wife. He asks her name. The young lady replies that her name is Ellie. Then the man asks the boy's name. The girl replies that his name is Damien. The Duke briefly says that he understands. At that moment, the director enters the room and says that she heard the Duke calling her. She nervously wonders if the girl has told everything. And if that's true, she won't forgive her so easily. The Duke calmly declares that he intends to adopt the child. The woman is immediately surprised. Then he adds that he will also take the child who is nearby. The main character is also a little surprised at this moment. Auntie asks if the Duke intends to take the girl as his adopted daughter. But the man replies that he will not. He will take her as his daughter-in-law. The main character is shocked and wonders what he is talking about, because in the original story, Damien is supposed to be connected to Duchess Isabel. At that moment, the boy quietly turns to Ellie and asks her not to leave. The girl remembers how he had asked her earlier if she was caring for him out of pity. She realizes that in this short time, she has already grown attached to Damien. In fact, the thought that they will not part makes her happy. But the headmistress cries out sharply and says that the Duke cannot take this slovenly girl. She is outraged and asks if he really wants to make her his daughter-in-law, and does he even know who this child is? The woman realizes that if the girl is taken away, their deception will be revealed, so she must stop this. She claims that the girl's mother was a thief, who tried to steal Count Letione's belongings. She says outright that they are looking at the daughter of a thief. The young lady just looks calmly at the director and realizes that she is talking about the famous story of the thief from the patriarchal empire. At that time, the empire was engulfed in war. The thief managed to break through the strict security and sneak right into the palace. They say she stole the emperor's precious treasure. After that, he gathered a huge number of people to catch her, but he never succeeded. Later, she was captured by Count Lecione. Ante remembers hearing this story. The woman was executed in the county. But this is the first time he has heard that she had a daughter. The director turns to the Duke again and asks him to believe her words. She says that adopting such a girl could greatly tarnish the Duke's honor. But the man coldly orders her to be quiet and asks how much longer he will have to listen to this. He says he is tired of listening to this meaningless doggy nonsense and the chatter of someone who behaves no better than a dog. Then he orders Auntie to remove this woman from here. She just clenches her teeth viciously. After that, the Duke kneels on one knee in front of the main character and calmly says that the choice is hers. He asks if she agrees to go with him. The girl thinks for a moment and says she has one condition. She asks that all the outside tutors be dismissed, and that will be her only request. The headmistress cries out in shock. She cannot comprehend how a young girl could say such things. Meanwhile, the knight realizes that the child has not only accepted the Duke's offer, but has also set a condition. And it becomes clear that this girl is not ordinary at all. The young lady calmly explains her request. Even if she and Damien are taken away by the Duke, the other children will still suffer. Therefore, she asks that the educators be punished for their actions and that this place be turned into a real shelter, one where children will no longer be sold as commodities. The Duke calmly replies that this will be done. After that, he stands up and turns to Ante, calmly ordering him to get to work immediately. He talks about depriving the teachers of their rights, and Ante replies that he understands the Duke's order. At this moment, the headmistress just looks on in shock at what is happening. She begins to scream that this cunning and worthless girl cannot be trusted. As she is led out the door, she manages to cry out that she will not let this go. The main character watches her leave and realizes that although she asked for this, she did not expect the Duke to fulfill her request so quickly. Meanwhile, the man says that from now on, this shelter will be exactly what she wants it to be. so he asks her the same question again. Will she go with him? In response, the girl only thinks about why he is taking her with him. She doesn't know the reasons, but everything is turning out quite well. And if Damien just left now, her heart would not be at peace. So until he meets the real heroine, she intends to stay with him. So the young lady reaches out her hand to the Duke, squeezes it, and calmly says that she agrees and will go with him. A short time later, the man is standing next to the carriage and informs her that the former director and teachers have been dismissed. Until the new director arrives, people they have selected from the duchy will take care of the orphanage. They also plan to increase the number of teachers so that there will no longer be a shortage of staff. Hearing this, the main character sincerely thanks him. She realizes that now the children will finally be able to live in peace, and this thought makes her truly happy. The girl looks at the door of the orphanage with a slight smile and suddenly thinks how strange it all is. Too many things coincided, as if it were not a coincidence at all. After all, at first he thought she was just the emperor's puppet, but even after that, she didn't immediately accept his proposal. The girl boldly put forward her condition and seemed genuinely happy that the orphanage had changed. The man reflects that, in general, he did not want to accept such an unreasonable condition. But then he remembers his wife, who once said she could solve the problem that was bothering him. However, she had one condition. He had to marry her. At that moment, someone quietly calls Sister Ellie, and the main character asks if it is Betty. The girl says that if Ellie leaves, they will never see each other again. She adds that she has never seen other sisters who left the orphanage before. Ellie gently replies that she shouldn't worry, because she will definitely come back. The little girl asks hopefully if this is true and if she promises to return. After a while, the Duke walks through the garden and says that no matter how hard he tries, he still cannot put a person into eternal sleep, so he at least takes his sword in his hands. At that moment, Damien emerges from behind a tree and says he cannot understand why the Duke is taking him and Ellie away. He also asks what exactly he is going to do. The Duke replies that when they return to the estate, the boy will first have to learn to speak. But the young man only repeats his question and demands an explanation as to why he is taking him and Ellie away. Then the Duke calmly replies that he is not taking anyone away. He is only returning the boy to where he truly belongs. And very soon the young man will understand everything himself, because this is what belonged to him from the very beginning. Right now, his appearance is more like that of a wild beast. But if he regains his true position, his gaze will become much harsher. And then, at least, he will be able to protect the people dear to him. The boy thinks that adults are much more difficult and frightening to trust than children. That's why he doesn't want to follow this man at all. But if this person turned out to be like the landlady, Ellie could be in danger while he was unconscious. And yet, because of his own weakness, he was unable to protect her at that moment. While the headmistress was being led out of the room, Damien woke up. The main character told him that they needed to go to where he really belonged. The young man immediately asked about Ellie and whether she would go with him. The girl confidently replied that, of course, she would go. After all, she promised to always be by his side, and now she says it again, assuring him that he will be able to protect the people dear to him. Then he tells the Duke never to make Ellie work. The man is surprised and asks what kind of work such a small child could possibly do, and asks the young man not to worry about such meaningless things. But the young man stubbornly replies that if the man ever torments Ellie, he will not let it go. After these words, he simply turns away. The Duke looks at him and realizes that this young man is strikingly similar to his father, and for this, he doesn't even need mana stones. After all, that man could wag his tail as much as he wanted in front of his wife, but as soon as he turned to other people, his attitude immediately became cold. With such a character, it was hard not to notice that he was Clyde's son. A little later, they're already riding in a carriage, and the main character wakes up. She wonders when she fell asleep and notices that Damien has also fallen asleep. Now it is clear that he is no longer sick. Suddenly, the girl looks out the window and sees a whole flock of crows. It seems to her that darkness is gathering around them, as if a war is raging somewhere nearby. The young lady realizes that she could not have imagined such desolation. It seems that the rumors about this place being infested with demons may indeed be true, but she must not lose heart. At that moment, a crow suddenly knocks on the carriage window, and the main character wonders in surprise if the bird has heard her thoughts. She even feels as if their eyes met for a moment, but the girl immediately dismisses this thought because such a thing simply cannot be. A little later, the young lady gets out of the carriage and, seeing the huge mansion, thinks about how sparkling and majestic it is. However, looking up at the sky, she notices the ravens again, and when they approach the doors of the estate, Damien asks if everything is all right with the young lady. She replies that everything is fine, and at that moment the servants greet the Duke. They report that they have received news of his arrival. The man calmly replies that is so, but then he suddenly remembers something and says that there was one detail in the message that he forgot to mention. The butler immediately asks what it is. The Duke replies that he has brought a child with him and that this girl will become his daughter-in-law here. The man calmly replies that he understands, but then he suddenly realizes what the Duke has said and asks in surprise what he meant. Ellie also understands that there is a serious meaning hidden in these words, and she herself remains completely confused. The man looks intently at the Duke, as if demanding an explanation. But the Duke simply replies calmly that it just turned out that way. The butler then sighs heavily and says that even the knight did not make any decisions in advance. At this moment, the main character clutches the hem of her dress and realizes that she is clearly not welcome here. The girl remembers how one day the woman who took her into her family told her to call her mom from now on. But when she found out that the girl was the daughter of a thief, she screamed in horror, asking why Ellie hadn't told her right away. The girl was even younger then than she is now. Each time, she sincerely hoped to find a new family, and now she realizes how naive that was. Now she thinks differently and just wants to prepare for the future because she no longer needs a loving family. At this point, the butler asks if he understands correctly that the young lady does not have a maid to help her, adding that he should have been informed of this in advance. The main character immediately says that she can manage on her own. She promises to behave quietly and says that she does not need anyone's help because even in the orphanage she did all the hard work herself without anyone noticing. The girl does not want to be considered a troublesome child who constantly needs help. At that moment, the Duke turns to his servant, who assures him that he will take care of everything. The man just sighs quietly, and one of the maids addresses the knight. After that, the knight approaches the Duke directly. He reports that his relatives from his collateral line are waiting for him. The Duke asks him to repeat what he said. He asks if the rumors have already spread. The knight replies that it is quite possible, and the Duke remarks that where there are many ears, there are always many talkative mouths. After that, he says to tell them that he will rest a little first, and then meet with them later. He also asks Franz to prepare rooms for the children. The butler agrees and politely asks them to go in the right direction. The young lady realizes that they are talking about second-degree relatives. It is these people who will threaten Damien's future, although Duke Schutz adopted him. A real connection between them will only appear in the distant future. This means that Damien's trials are just beginning. The girl understands one thing. She simply cannot watch as her Damien's life falls apart again. Meanwhile, in the Great Hall, one of the men slams his hand on the table and shouts indignantly that it's impossible. He can't believe that the Duke really found that child and that he managed to survive at all. Another man calmly asks whether the Duke has seen this with his own eyes, but his interlocutor replies that there must be some trickery involved, because even mana stones can be replaced. In any case, according to him, the Duke is clearly trying to take power away from the vassals of the Clyde clan and the collateral line again. Moreover, he brought the child of the late Duke Clyde into the family. For all these 11 years, the Schutz clan has ruled at the pinnacle of power, and now they doubt whether it is right to give all power to a child who has been wandering around for all this time. The man loudly declares once again that they must find a way to stop this. One of those present says that his thoughts coincide with the Viscount's opinion, but he also wonders who is capable of opposing the Duke. If it were possible to break him, it would have been done long ago. The Viscount realizes that he is dealing with nothing but stubborn old men. They just repeat the same thing over and over again and are incapable of anything more. At that moment, the door opens, and the Duke enters the room. With a slight smile, he asks what they are talking about so loudly, because even outside the door, his ears are already hurting. The Viscount immediately says that the Duke has arrived. The man calmly replies that it seems they really wanted to talk to him, so he decided to visit them in person. The men at the table are visibly nervous. The Duke says there is no point in wasting time on empty talk. He reminds them that, as they have already heard, he has found Clyde's son. One of the men politely congratulates him and asks the boy's name. The Duke replies that his name is Damien. One of those present remarks that it sounds very bold and impressive. The Duke calmly adds that, from now on, Damien will be the head of the Clyde family. And he understands perfectly well that with this statement, they are already drawing a clear line between themselves and the boy. After all, if a child is given the name of the Clyde clan while still a nobody, they could attack him at any moment. And the same applies not only to the vassals of the Clyde family, but also to relatives from the collateral line. Then the Duke adds that Damien has a very intelligent girlfriend. He decided that she could be useful to the family, so he brought her along too, and intends to give both children an education as future heirs. The Viscount cries out in shock and asks what the Duke is talking about. Can these children really be worthy of bearing the name Clyde? The man smiles slightly and calmly says that this means only one thing. He will do everything possible to support them. The Viscount is shocked again and asks what he means. The other man also says that it is impossible and does not understand why they should take these children at all. But Erhard abruptly stops them and tells them to stop. He declares that he is adopting these children, and when the time comes, he will marry them. The men in the room are stunned and think about what he is saying about marriage. And they understand perfectly well that even at a young age, an engagement makes a person a full member of the family. Moreover, if the child chosen by Duke Schutz himself marries Damien, then no one will be able to take the top spot in the Clyde family. The Duke himself understands that, upon hearing about Clyde's found son, these people would surely try to either get rid of the boy or marry him to their daughter. But he is not going to let that happen. After that, he asks them to bless his decision, reminding them that those who have sworn to give their lives for their family must follow his will. The man opposite him just stares at the Duke in shock, and the Viscount, his hands trembling, realizes that all this is really happening. He knew that the Duke would not let the situation go so easily, but he could not even imagine that he would choose a future partner for marriage. And now there is only one thing left to do: find another way to change the situation. Meanwhile, the main character enters her room. Seeing how beautifully everything is arranged there, she is sincerely amazed. The girl can't even believe that this room is really meant for her. She looks at the luxurious chandeliers, sparkling like jewels, and catches herself thinking that she even wants to bite them. The young lady turns to Damien, but when she turns around, she finds herself face to face with 4 maids. Ellie is slightly surprised, but one of the women calmly explains that the gentleman has left with the butler. She adds that from today onwards, they will be nearby and will assist Ms. Ellie. The woman introduces herself as Rona and assures her that she will do everything possible to make the girls stay here comfortable. Rona says she is pleased to meet her. The main character also bows politely in response, greeting them, and Rona gently remarks that Ms. Ellie can speak freely with them. The young lady asks a little confusedly if this is really allowed. She realizes that she has never spoken to adults so informally before, and therefore feels awkward when they call her ma'am. The woman smiles warmly and assures her that she will get used to it in time. After that, Rona turns to the other maids and asks them to welcome Mrs. Ellie as well. One of the girls steps forward and says her name is Ivana. Then, she begins to introduce the other maids. She explains that one of them is called May and the third is called Ashel. If the lady finds it difficult to remember their names, she can call them whatever she likes. Ellie realizes that remembering names is not difficult at all. She confidently says that she has already memorized everything and asks everyone to love and cherish her. The maids exchange surprised glances, thinking about what a kind mistress they have. Meanwhile, the young lady wonders if they have mistaken her for a real noblewoman. Rona notices that since the introductions are over, the girl should move on. She has come from far away and is probably tired, so first they will help her take a bath. After a while, the maids are already combing the young lady's hair. At this time, the girl is thinking about what to do next, because she still feels confused. She doesn't want to show them her undeveloped and, as she thinks, frightening body. But she understands that if she starts to hesitate, the maids may begin to despise her, so first she just needs to get used to it. At that moment, one of the maids can't hold back a quiet chuckle, and Rona immediately notices it. Ashel quickly apologizes and says that the lady is just very nice. Then she asks if the lady has a favorite scent. The young lady asks in surprise if they are talking about scents, and honestly admits that she knows nothing about them. She adds that warm water is enough for her because the water at the shelter was always too cold. The girl realizes that she doesn't even know the names of the scents, so she told the truth. Now she is worried whether her answer was correct. The maid gently replies that until the lady finds a fragrance she likes, they will try even harder. The young lady thanks them for that. She says that she will also try not to cause them any unnecessary trouble. But the maid smiles and replies a little differently. She says that they will try even harder until the lady stops worrying about them altogether. After saying this, she smiles warmly. That same evening, the main character is already lying in her bed. The girl reflects that even though she had help, bathing took much longer than when she washed herself alone. But she was able to enjoy the warm water and fragrant soap to her heart's content. Now, for the first time, Ellie understands what true lightness and freshness are. She enjoys this feeling so much that she doesn't want to leave at all, and she even starts rolling around on the bed. But suddenly, she bumps into something nearby. Turning around, the girl asks in surprise if it's Damien. She asks what happened and why he looks so surprised. The guy replies that nothing special happened. He says he was just a little scared. Meanwhile, Ellie notices that the young man has cut his hair. She gently touches him and realizes that he is uncomfortable and embarrassed about his short haircut. The guy, however, can only think about how Ellie has become even more beautiful, and his heart begins to beat faster. The young lady asks if he heard the butler's conversation. The guy asks in surprise what exactly she is talking about. The girl replies that Rona mentioned that they would become a couple. Hearing this, the young man is visibly surprised. Ellie explains that being a couple means loving one person for the rest of your life. Then the young man asks what love is. The main character thinks about how to explain it. In the end, she admits that she doesn't really know herself, but that's what her mother said. She said that when a person falls in love, their stomach feels ticklish, as if their whole body is on fire, and your heart starts beating very fast. Hearing this, the young man is embarrassed and suddenly wonders if he really loves Ellie. Meanwhile, the main character adds that it's hard to explain everything properly. After these words, the young man suddenly starts hiccuping. Ellie asks in shock what happened to him. The guy replies that he was just very scared by all this. The girl says that if he closes his nose, the hiccups may go away. At the same time, she realizes that her words about them becoming a couple must have confused him greatly. She herself said that she would help him find a family, but in the end, she became that family. And now she has a strange feeling that she herself was striving for this by any means necessary. The young lady gently takes his cheek and says that it seems like his hiccups might start again. The young man asks in surprise why she thinks so. The girl replies that his face has turned so red that he looks like he is about to explode. The main character understands that a person must know their limits. Someday, the people in this place will find out that she is the daughter of a thief. Even though Duke Shuetz brought her here, she still cannot be sure of her future, and must remain as modest as possible. At that moment, the girl touches his cheek and asks if he has a fever, but the guy replies that he is just hot. Then the main character suggests moving over a little, since the bed is wide enough. But the young man immediately says that he doesn't want to. The girl reminds him that he himself said he was hot. However, the guy still asks her not to move. Then the young lady cautiously asks, "Isn't Damien afraid of nightmares, like last time?" Hearing this, the young man is even happy. He says yes, he is afraid, because this place still seems foreign to him. The young lady realizes that this is not at all like in the story, where he quickly got used to the Duke's estate. The girl quietly says that she understands everything. Meanwhile, the young man simply covers himself with a blanket. The main character moves a little closer to him and quietly asks if he will be able to sleep, even if it is hot. But that way, he will be less afraid. The young man responds by hugging her tightly and quietly, saying that he can. And the main character suddenly realizes one simple thing. He seems to have become even cuter than before. She looks at him and gently asks him to close his eyes. After that, the girl wishes him good night. The young lady realizes that today has been a very eventful day. Although he has had many difficult days in the past, the future holds much more happiness for him than the pain he has experienced. Therefore, tonight and tomorrow night, the nightmares should no longer come. The girl quietly wishes that the Milky Way will fill his dreams. At the same time, the Viscount turns to his servant and asks if he has found out anything. The servant replies that he has. The girl brought by the Duke turns out to be a simple commoner, and her mother, who has already fallen into eternal sleep, was a famous thief. He adds that his master has surely heard this story. It is about a woman who once stole His Majesty's treasures. The young man immediately understands the situation. The Duke has brought home a boy who was wandering around who knows where, and the daughter of a thief. In his opinion, it even seems like a rather interesting combination. After that, he throws a bag of coins to the servant and says that he has done an excellent job. Such information is indeed very valuable. He adds that the servant always brings information so quickly that it is impossible not to admire him. The young man modestly replies that his master is exaggerating a little. Then he picks up the bag of money and says that he is leaving. The Viscount realizes that he must report everything to His Majesty. Although it is hard to believe that the Duke himself does not know about this. But if the Emperor finds out the truth, the Duke's and Clyde's property may be confiscated in favor of the imperial family. The man thinks about what to do. Suddenly, he has a brilliant idea that will allow him to win this situation and get rid of the girl. At this moment, the main character yawns quietly. One of the maids immediately asks if her mistress is too tired. The girl replies that she is a little tired. The woman asks her to be patient a little longer, because today she will be presented to the elders and vassals. After that, the young lady is dressed in a beautiful dress and told that everything is ready. The girl looks at her reflection and realizes that she didn't even know she could look so cute when dressed up. The maid tells the lady that as soon as Mr. Damien is ready, he will come too, so she asks if the girl can wait for him in the bedroom for a little while. The young lady agrees and sits down on the bed. At that moment, she thinks that all this is rather tiresome. The maids continue to admire her and say that Miss Ellie's skin is so white that if you touch it, powdered sugar will fall out. Meanwhile, the young lady thinks only of when Damien will arrive. At that moment, there is an unexpected knock at the door. The maid asks what has happened. One of the servants replies that Viscount Corbin wants to greet Ellie personally. The woman asks in surprise if it is really Viscount Corvino. The young lady realizes that he probably wants to learn more about her before their official meeting. The woman turns to the Viscount and politely says that Mrs. Ellie is not quite ready yet. But the man simply ignores her words and remarks that, in his opinion, the girl already looks perfect. Then he turns to the lady and asks if he was too rude. The young lady realizes that she is dealing with a man who is not used to waiting his turn. She calmly replies to the Viscount that everything is fine and her preparations are almost complete. The man nods and says that then he seems to have arrived just in time. He adds that he did not come empty-handed. To get acquainted, he brought a rare item. It's a mineral called Blue Hope, a mana stone that can only be mined on their land. The man thinks to himself that if this lady is really the daughter of a thief, then it will be easy to catch her. For example, stealing. He explains to the girl that if she has Blue Hope, she will be able to use magic. And that is supposedly very important to her. After that, the man turns to one of the maids and asks her to leave. He says he wants to talk to the lady alone, Rona is surprised, and the Viscount only asks if she really thinks he is capable of something strange. The woman falls silent. When the main character nods slightly, Rona leaves the room. The young lady looks closely at the stone and realizes that it is indeed very beautiful. Its color is almost the same as Damien's eyes. But the man abruptly tells the girl to stop looking at it like that. After all, it is not something she can have. The young lady gets a little angry and asks what he means. The man simply replies that he is generous and will allow her to admire it. He says she can look at it as long as she wants, and when she's done, she should return the stone through his maid. The main character tries to stop him and asks him to listen. But the man is already turning away and says that he is leaving and they will see each other later. The young lady is left alone with the crystal and begins to wonder if this is all some kind of strange one-sided game. One of the maids says that even though the man said so, he still chose this mana stone especially for the lady. Then she asks if the girl would like to look at it a little longer. At that moment, another maid addresses Miss Ellie. She informs them that it is time for them to leave, as Mr. Damien has already arrived. The young lady immediately asks if the young man is already here. She says that she needs to go quickly then. The maid is slightly surprised by such haste. She understands that this is not possible. If the girl leaves right now, her mission will fail. After all, the Viscount instructed her to place the mana stone in the young lady's pocket at the right moment and quietly leave. He also said that the girl is uneducated and will definitely not notice anything. The maid cautiously asks Ellie if the Viscount did anything strange, and she replies that everything was normal. At this moment, another maid picks up the stone and realizes one thing. If she doesn't do it now, she will not be able to discreetly place the stone under the young lady's feet later. Therefore, she decides to act immediately and approaches her mistress. She says that she will go too. The main character calmly agrees, and the maid realizes that there is no more time. In the next second, she pretends to have twisted her ankle. She begins to fall, and at that moment, while losing her balance, she deftly slips the crystal into the young lady's pocket. In her mind, she rejoices that everything went perfectly, and the stone is now in place. Immediately after that, the woman finally falls to the floor. Rona asks in shock if everything is okay with the lady and if she has hurt herself. The girl calmly replies that, as far as she can see, everything is fine. Rona says that she will definitely reprimand the maid for such carelessness. She also adds that May is waiting outside and that she will escort the young lady out. But the main character suddenly turns to the fallen maid and says that there is something else that needs to be done before leaving. The girl comes closer and says that the maid has fallen, so her clothes are probably dirty. The woman replies to the lady in surprise that she is fine. The main character says with relief that everything is fine and is about to leave. The two maids silently watch her as she leaves. After a while, the young lady stands in front of the assembled guests and introduces herself, saying that her name is Ellie. The men immediately begin to whisper among themselves. They notice that the girl does not even have a surname, which means that the Duke's bride is a commoner, and they are puzzled by what is happening. Ellie realizes that their reaction is even milder than she expected. Meanwhile, Damien is already preparing to defend her. But the Duke quietly stops him and reminds him not to forget what he told him earlier. Until he regains his former position, it is better for him not to interfere and to behave calmly. The young man is angry, but he restrains himself. The main character notices this and asks if he is in a bad mood, but he replies that everything is fine. At that moment, the Viscount approaches the Duke. He apologizes for the suddenness and asks if he can show him something. The Duke replies that it must be urgent, since the matter has not been brought up for discussion. The Viscount confirms this and says that it concerns the Blue Hope stone, which he mentioned earlier. He explains that the stone was only finished yesterday, and he wanted the Duke to be the first to see it. The Duke agrees and orders the stone to be brought. The Viscount immediately turns to the maid. He asks her to bring the mineral, but the woman unexpectedly says she has something to tell him. She leans over and whispers something in his ear. The man is shocked and asks what she just said. The Duke is also interested in what happened. The Viscount replies that he has been informed of the disappearance of the Blue Hope. The hall immediately erupts in commotion. People whisper and ask if the stone has really disappeared, since it was being closely guarded. The maid says that she was the one who was watching the stone. The man immediately asks how exactly she did it. He also wants to know who had the stone last. The maid begins to get nervous and explains in a trembling voice. She says that she recently showed Blue Hope to that very lady, but then was unable to get it back. The Viscount asks if she is referring to the moment when they came to greet the girl, and the maid replies that that is indeed what happened. The man apologizes to the Duke for his words, but says that he has heard a story. He recalls the famous thief who once broke into the castle of Count Lycione. He then declares that the young lady is the daughter of that very woman. The people in the hall cry out and ask if the thief's daughter is really among them. They turn to the Duke and say that after what they have heard, they cannot simply turn a blind eye. The Duke realizes that his initial reaction to the talk of Blue Hope was mere idle chatter. The Viscount adds that this is precisely why he would like to search the girl, if the Duke does not mind. The young lady asks in surprise what he is talking about, but the Viscount merely bows politely. He asks for permission to examine her. The main character calmly replies that her mother was indeed a thief, but she herself did not take anything. Then the man offers to check it out. Damien looks at Ellie with concern. The heroine agrees, but says that if nothing is found on her, the Viscount must apologize. The Viscount smiles and says that this is a rather bold condition, but he accepts it. He then asks the Duke for permission. Erhard replies that if the young lady has already agreed, his permission is hardly necessary. The maid approaches Ellie and asks her to forgive her for the inconvenience. Then she begins to check her pocket. But she finds nothing and says in surprise that it is empty. The Viscount first confirms that there is nothing there, but a second later, he understands the meaning of her words. He cries out sharply, asking what nonsense she is talking about and whether she has really checked properly. The woman replies that she has checked carefully. Then the man jumps up to the young lady, pushes the maid away, and says he will check it himself. But he finds nothing either. In complete shock, he asks if there really is nothing there. People begin to whisper that perhaps the girl did not take the stone at all. But Viscount Corbin was so sure of his version, the man just clenches his fists. In a rage, he grabs the girl and starts shaking her, demanding to know where she hid the stone. Damien shouts Ellie's name in horror. But at that moment, someone grabs the Viscount by the arm. It turns out to be the Duke. He calmly says that the man is behaving too violently, even though he can't find anything with his eyes open. The main character realizes that she did not even expect help from Duke Schutz. The Duke calmly remarks that, in his opinion, the Viscount now looks more like the person who arranged this mess himself. He asks if he is mistaken. The Viscount hastily replies that this is not the case at all. He is simply worried about the Duke, because the situation seems obvious. He says he had no choice but to doubt. The man then replies that in that case, it is logical to doubt the Viscount himself. Following the same logic, the Duke turns to Ante. He agrees and approaches the Viscount, apologizing in advance. The man replies that he has no objection to being searched. He even tells the servant to make sure he is clean. The servant begins the search. But suddenly he finds the very stone and shows it to the Duke. The Viscount looks at it in complete shock. He does not understand how the stone ended up with him. In a panic, he turns to the Duke. He assures him that he knows nothing about it and asks him to believe him because he is truly innocent. At this moment, the main character thinks it's good that Blue Hope is such a light stone. At first, the thief's clever daughter felt the weight in her pocket and immediately figured out the maid's plan. When the search began, the girl carefully took the stone out of her pocket and quietly put it in the maid's pocket. Then, taking advantage of the moment when the Viscount was distracted, she transferred the stone to his pocket. The girl realizes that everything worked out exactly as she had planned. The station where she could get off is called Clever Ellie. Besides, it was cold in the north, so thick clothing was perfect for her plan. Thanks to this, neither the maid nor the Viscount noticed the stone. The Duke addresses the Viscount again, and the latter is visibly nervous. The man speaks calmly. Regardless of a person's position, one always has to pay for lying. Then he turns to Ante. The Duke orders the Viscount and the maid to be taken away. The man cries out in horror. He asks the Duke to forgive him just this once, assuring him that he made a mistake. But he is already being led out of the hall. The young lady thinks that an ordinary person would hardly have made such a mistake, but it is still hard to see how it ends. However, if she had done nothing, she would not have been able to protect herself or others. At that moment, someone addresses Ellie. He asks what condition she recently set. The girl calmly replies. She says that all they need to do is apologize. Upon hearing this, the aristocrats are visibly surprised. The Duke turns to them and asks if they all heard that, since they have ears. The men immediately kneel and ask for forgiveness for their disrespect. The Duke says that their fate should be decided right now, but Ante is busy at the moment. Therefore, the conversation will continue after the meeting. The men thank him for his mercy. He adds that those who were not against the girl can sit down calmly. Several men thank him and sit down in their seats. Then the Duke turns to the young lady and Damien and invites them to sit down as well. He sits down at the table himself and says that now they can return to the main business. As he said earlier, he intends to marry these two children. Then one of the men raises his hand and reminds him that nobles are forbidden to marry commoners. The Duke replies that he is well aware of this. That is why he has gathered everyone here. He is looking for a family to adopt Ellie. The girl looks at him in shock. The men are also surprised and whisper among themselves, wondering if he is really talking about adoption. The young lady just smiles quietly. The Duke asks which family would be most suitable, but Ellie wonders how nobles could possibly adopt the daughter of a thief. He adds that if no one agrees, they will have to find another way. Then the Duke turns to Ellie and says that she will be the one to choose because she will bear the name of that family. The young lady thinks about it, but old words spoken by people come to mind. Someone once said that it would be better to make her a servant to their daughter. Others said that it was a disgrace to their family and that they had nothing to talk about with a child of such origin. Brothers and sisters from other homes also told their parents that they were ashamed to have anything to do with someone like her. As a result, the young lady found herself on the street again and again. The girl remembers those moments. She remembers how she turned to the woman and asked if she was really her mother. The woman replied that it was difficult for her, but the girl needed to be patient. After all, she was her child, who would be loved wherever she went. She always said that the young lady was born surrounded by love. The girl realizes that she used to be angry with her mother. It seemed unfair to her to live such a life. But still, the only person who truly loved her was her mother. And now the girl understands that these people will never accept her as their real daughter anyway. So she decides to just be grateful for this chance. In her mind, she is inclined to stay with the Schuetz family. At that moment, a maid enters the room and apologizes to the Duke. She says she has an urgent message for Baron Amanta. The man asks what has happened. The maid begins to say that Baroness Amanta has suddenly, but does not have time to finish. The Baron bows to the Duke and apologizes, saying that he must leave urgently. After that, he leaves the hall. Someone quietly says that the Baroness's condition has worsened again. It is difficult for the Baron, because he hardly ever leaves her side, fearing that something bad might happen. The main character realizes that she has heard this name somewhere before. At that moment, someone asks what will happen if a new mine is opened, because the Baron will not even be able to inspect it. And then the girl remembers. Baron Amanta was just a minor nobleman who owned a small mine. But later, Damien will win the war, wielding a sword made from minerals mined in this very mine. Moreover, in the north, where monsters abound, weapons mean money and power, and in such a situation, the girl turns to the Duke and says she wants to go to Baron Amanta. The man replies that if that is her decision, he will not dissuade her. But he adds that Baron Amant will have to be persuaded very well. Then he quietly leans over to the young lady and whispers that such a trick will not work on the Baron. The little girl is a little surprised. The man continues in a whisper that even if her trick worked on the foolish Corbin, that doesn't mean it will work on Baron Amant. The girl immediately realizes that he knows how she planted blue hope on the Viscount. But she doesn't understand why the Duke simply turned a blind eye to it. She also wonders if it could be because she helped him meet Damien and exposed the Viscount's lies, which ultimately proved useful to the Duke. Meanwhile, the man asks if she is sure she can handle it. The young lady realizes that the Duke was the first person in the world to recognize her value. The girl responds decisively that she will manage. She says that she will definitely prove her worth. A little later, she is walking down the corridor with the boy and asks him if he likes it here. The boy replies that it is very beautiful here. The young lady recalls Ivana's words about the many beautiful flowers. This place is not even a little like the harsh duchy, but she is glad that Damien likes it. Then she notices that the vassals have been very quiet since that day. It seems that they are really afraid of the Duke. At that moment, the young man notices something flying through the air. The young lady thinks how cute he is, because it seems like he is seeing a dandelion seed for the first time. The boy deftly catches it and happily announces that he has caught it. Then he turns to Ellie. He points ahead and asks her to look. The young lady asks if there is something interesting there. The boy points to the flowers and says that they are the same color as her hair. The main character agrees and says that it's true. Then she decides to look for a color similar to Damien's. Soon she says she has found them and points to the blue flowers. The young man asks, "Are they really his color?" The girl replies that yes, they are as blue as his eyes, and asks if they are beautiful. The young man smiles. The main character notices that he now knows how to smile brightly and sincerely. Then she asks him if he has heard that she may soon be adopted. The boy asks in surprise if it's true and if she's going to leave. The girl replies that she is. She says she is going to become Baron Amant's adopted daughter. The young man immediately asks if this means he will never see Ellie again. The girl reassures him and says that this is not the case. She will simply take his surname, but they will still be together. The young man asks if this is true. Ellie confidently replies that of course it is, because she has already promised him. Then she notices that he is a little embarrassed and asks if Damien has decided anything for himself. She remembers that he was going somewhere in the morning. The guy explains that he was being taught fencing and that serious training would begin tomorrow. The girl says that today is their last day for quiet games. After that, she suggests playing tag. She explains that it is a game where one person chases the other. The young man already imagines how the girl will catch him and agrees. The main character laughs and says that then he should run first. After a while, they were both out of breath from running. The girl says she is very tired and suggests going back because Ivan will surely be worried. The young man agrees and admits that he is also tired. Ellie adds that the game is over so they can let go of each other's hands. The young man nods. But when the main character turns around, she suddenly notices someone nearby. It occurs to her that it might be Viscount Corbin's vassal. Now she and Damien are completely alone. The girl immediately shouts to the boy to be careful. But when the young lady opens her eyes, she realizes that no one is attacking them. And when she looks more closely, she sees a woman sitting on the ground. She is shivering from the cold and quietly asks where she is, adding that it was very cold there. The young lady realizes that this is definitely not a vassal. Then she approaches the woman and asks if she is all right. The girl notices that the woman's clothes are very luxurious. She is definitely not a servant of the duchy. She suggests going into the greenhouse first, but when she touches her hand, she is suddenly surprised. The woman's body is almost as cold as ice. If left as it is, something bad could happen. But if she is forced to go, she may become frightened. Therefore, the girl decides to speak as gently and calmly as possible. She introduces herself and says her name is Ellie. Then she adds that she was walking with her friend Damien and asks who this woman is. The woman asks in surprise why they call her grandmother. The young lady is a little confused. The girl wonders if she really doesn't remember anything. Perhaps it's a case of occlusion. It is a disease in which memories gradually fade away. It resembles dementia from her past life. The young lady had heard that if such a person is made to worry, their condition can worsen. She adjusts the woman's scarf and says that her hands are very cold. The girl says that there are many beautiful flowers growing nearby and suggests going there. She says it is warm there. The woman asks if there really is a warm place nearby. The little girl says yes and asks Damien if it's true. The boy nods. The girl tells Damien that the woman might fall again, so she suggests supporting her on both sides. The woman smiles unexpectedly. A little later, they enter the greenhouse. The woman says that it is indeed very warm here. The young lady asks why she was in such a cold place and whether she got lost. The woman replies that she doesn't know herself. She says she doesn't understand why she ended up there. The young lady replies gently. That happens sometimes. She adds that she also forgets a lot sometimes. Then the girl asks her name. The woman is surprised and asks if the little girl really wants to know. The girl nods and says that she thought the woman didn't like being called grandma. The woman thinks about her words and tries to remember her name. Suddenly, someone shouts Viera's name loudly. The main character thinks the voice sounds familiar. The man quickly approaches and asks if she knows how long he has been looking for her. He also asks what she is doing here. The woman asks if it is Marvin. The man just tells her to look at herself. The main character realizes that it is the Baron. He tells the woman to come to him because it is dangerous here. Viera wants to say something to Marvin. Meanwhile, the young lady realizes that she is standing before a married couple and that this woman is Baroness Samantha. The Baron says he asked her to always stay with her maid and demands that she follow him. The woman quietly apologizes. Then the Baron looks coldly at the young lady and says that he does not know what they were plotting, but they should not use his wife to harm her. The main character asks what he is talking about. She realizes that the Baron seems to have decided that she deliberately became close to the Baroness. Damien immediately stands up for Ellie. He asks the Baron not to speak ill of her. The Baron replies to the young Duke that he seems to have misunderstood everything. But the boy says he is not mistaken. He adds that a good person would not say such things to Ellie. The young lady looks at him in shock. She realizes that he should not oppose the Baron like this. Although the Baron is old and rarely wields a sword, he was once an outstanding knight. Moreover, in the future, he will become Damien's mentor. The young lady gently tells the boy that she is fine and he does not need to continue. The Baron just laughs and says that the girl's skills are truly impressive. He adds that now he understands why the Duke brought her here. Viera quietly addresses her husband. But the Baron only says that her cunning will not work on him. He warns the girl not to approach his wife because he has no intention of adopting her. After these words, they leave. The main character thinks that everything is lost. She expected the Baron to dislike her, but she did not think it would be to this extent. However, the girl understands that his reaction was natural. After all, even Damien was once stigmatized by society. She tells the boy that it is not right to threaten people so harshly. The young man asks her in surprise why. He reminds her that she herself told him not to keep quiet when people heard him. The girl replies that she was talking about her own problems at the time. The boy says that the man had just hurt Ellie. That's why he got angry. Then he asks if he really did the wrong thing. The main character looks at him and understands. Damien is still a child who is just beginning to understand his emotions. For the first time, he felt anger and tried to protect someone dear to him. The girl wonders whether she should say that this is not acceptable. In the end, she puts her hands on his shoulders and tells him he did the right thing. She adds that he did well. The girl thinks this is true, because he began to express his feelings. The young man smiles. The girl realizes that she cannot suppress his emotions. He is still a child, kind and gentle, and if guided correctly, he will quickly learn to understand people. But she still says that if one day he gets so angry that he wants to rush into battle, and she tells him to stop, he must be able to stop. The young man asks if this is true, even if she is in danger. The girl replies that she will try not to get into dangerous situations, and if it does happen, she will find a way out. The boy says he understands. The girl strokes his head and thinks how innocent he still is. At that moment, someone calls out to the gentleman and the lady. The young lady turns around and sees Ivan. She immediately wonders whether the Baron has already announced his refusal. The woman asks if they have seen Baron Amont. The girl replies that they recently saw him with the Baroness. The maid says that if they meet the Baroness again, it would be best to stay away from her. The little girl asks why. The maid explains that the Baroness suffers from an illness that causes her to frequently lose her memory. When she forgets everything, she behaves like a child. Therefore, no one knows what she might do. The main character asks why she has started having such health problems. The woman replies that the Baron and Baroness have a son. His name is Jarrett. After the Baroness gave birth to him, her health deteriorated sharply. The main character asks if there is a way to fix this. The maid replies that she does not know. She adds that if they see the Baroness again, it would be best to inform the servants immediately. Then she asks if they understand everything. The young lady replies that she is not sure yet. She thinks about it. She thinks that the Baroness's condition does not seem so serious as to consider her terminally ill. After all, when she saw the Baron, she immediately called him by name. Even if the occlusion is difficult to control, is the only solution to simply leave her alone? The Baron, meanwhile, says that he has placed many servants around her, but did not expect that she would still be able to slip away unnoticed. It was an illness that even imperial medicine could not cure. Over time, such cases became more frequent, and one night, unable to bear it any longer, she screamed loudly. In the end, Vieru was found sleeping near a rock not far from the castle. No one understood why she kept losing her memory. Now she quietly says that she will be more careful in the future. The man thinks that maybe she just wants to forget everything. After all, he was the one who wanted a child in the first place. Perhaps it was he who tied up Vieira, who had always loved freedom. The woman turns to her husband and nervously clutches the hem of her dress. She says that she survived today thanks to that child. The man asks in surprise who she is talking about. The woman replies that he also saw the golden-haired girl. It was she who warmed her hands and wrapped her in a scarf. What's more, she took her to a warm greenhouse. The girl was so kind, almost like an angel, because without her, she would still be shivering from the cold outside. The man looks at his wife and suddenly freezes. He realizes that she is smiling and remembers how long it has been since he last saw that smile. The woman gently turns to Marvin and suggests meeting with the children tomorrow to apologize together. She says she is very grateful to the girl and asks if she can do that. The man looks at his wife silently. He understands that the child's behavior could have been just a game, because the girl needs their support, but when he sees his wife smile, his heart somehow becomes heavy. He remembers telling the girl that her tricks would not work on him and that she should not approach his wife because he had no intention of adopting her. Meanwhile, the main character says in surprise that she can't believe her eyes. She looks at Damien and admires his skin. The girl asks how it can be so soft and wonders if he knows what cotton candy is. The young man replies that he doesn't know. The girl says that she will definitely show him someday, because it is as soft and fluffy as his cheeks. The boy smiles and says that Ellie's cheeks are even better. The young lady immediately objects that his cheeks are still softer. Then she offers to let him check and unexpectedly puts his hand on her cheek. The young man is immediately embarrassed. The main character asks him if he is okay and if everything is normal. But he doesn't answer. The girl starts to worry and asks what's wrong. She even thinks that perhaps things are so bad that he cannot say anything. In her mind, she admits that this is not surprising because she used to eat poorly and did not take care of herself. At that moment, the maid addresses her mistress and apologizes for the intrusion. She informs her that Baron and Baroness Amanta have arrived. The young lady is surprised and asks if they have really come to see them. At that moment, the guests enter and bow. The Baron says that he did not know much and misunderstood Mrs. Ellie. Therefore, he has come to apologize. The girl is surprised because she thought he had come to interrogate her. Now she doesn't know how to react. She understands that the Baron has belatedly realized the value of the ore. Now the reason becomes clear to her. All this time, he was worried about the Baroness and couldn't focus on other matters. The girl thinks that if conditions are created where the Baron can work in peace, then Damien's sword could be made much sooner. After this thought, she asks if she can ask the Baron for a small favor. The Baron replies that of course she can, and asks what it is about. The girl says that she has heard that sick people often get confused. She adds that the louder the voice, the more frightened they become. Therefore, she speaks with a gentle smile, so that he doesn't get angry with his wife. Then she turns to the lady and suggests that they go for walks together sometimes. The man is surprised and asks if that is all the girl wants. The young lady replies that it is. Ellie explains that she has recently arrived here and her only friend is Damien, but he will soon be busy learning fencing. Therefore, she would be very pleased if Madame became her friend. Damien immediately says that he will not be busy at all, but the girl asks him to be quiet. Then she adds that she won't be a nuisance. She asks if they can go for a walk together at least 3 times a week. The woman replies that she might be a burden to her. The little girl immediately says that this is not the case at all. She suggests going to the greenhouse together again to look at the flowers. The woman looks at her in surprise. Then she leans toward the girl and says that it is an honor for her. She hopes that they can become good friends. Later, they sit at the table. The main character tells how she ended up at the Duke's estate. The woman listens and says that the decision to come north was not an easy one. The girl feels uncomfortable when adults speak to her so respectfully. She admits that at first she was afraid of the crows and everything around her, but compared to the shelter, this place is like paradise. The girl understands that this is 1,000 times better than being beaten. Besides, she will soon receive capital and be able to live peacefully. The woman takes her hands and says that the little girl has been through a lot. She asks if it was very difficult for her. The girl is embarrassed and says not really. She explains that the children in the orphanage were kind. Of course, there were some bad people, and the teachers were particularly awful. But the Duke fixed everything. The woman smiles and says that it's amazing. She adds that Duke Schuetz usually does not interfere in other people's affairs. The girl replies that he saved Damien. The woman quietly says that perhaps it was because of his guilty conscience. She hesitates to tell the girl more. But then she decides it is better to tell the truth. She begins to talk about the time when her memory was still clear. About 15 years ago, the Empire started a great war. The reason was a prophecy from the Great Temple. It said that a non-existent force would restore the Empire. This force was understood to be the life energy of the world tree. People began to study it and realized that magic exists in nature. The closer living beings were to the world tree, the stronger their mana became. People who lived near it could use special magic. But one day, the world tree suddenly withered away. Despite the clan's efforts, it never bloomed again. Then rumors began to spread that the clans were hiding the truth in order to monopolize the tree's power. Therefore, the imperial family and the temple started a war to protect the empire. The former Duke Clyde and Duke Schuetz also went to this war. There, they became close friends. When the empire won, people eagerly awaited the Duke's return. But he did not return alone. He brought Yuria with him. The main character listens and realizes that they are talking about Duchess Yuria. The book said almost nothing about her. The woman explains that Yuria was a member of a minority clan. The girl wonders how a girl from such a clan became a duchess. The woman says that the Schuetz clan is called the heirs of devil's blood. People with this surname often went mad. It was said to be an ancient curse. That is why the Schuetz lands were called cursed territory. The main character realizes that she had never heard of this before. The woman continues that the Duke may have gone to war to find a way to get rid of his madness. But after Yuria appeared, his madness disappeared. The girl is surprised and asks how this happened. The woman replies that no one knows for sure. Perhaps it was the magic of her clan. After that, the Duke and Yuria got married. It caused a huge scandal, but they truly loved each other. The main character understands that the Duke had no choice. To get rid of the curse, he had to bring someone from the clan. The woman adds that the clan's power came at a price. 3 years ago, when the Duke went to war again due to the rebellion of the Allied States, Yuria used magic to finally lift the curse. After that, the Duke severed all ties with the clan. But he continued to write letters. 2 years later, Duke Clyde sent a letter announcing that he had a son. On that day, Duke Schuetz opened the gates of his castle for the first time. The main character realizes that this was when the tragedy with the Clyde family occurred. Now it becomes clear to her why the Duke feels guilty towards Damien. The loss of his wife and close friend made him think that everything that happened was his fault. The girl begins to understand his feelings. After all, she too had once lost someone dear to her. The woman asks if she is all right. She says that perhaps she shouldn't have told her all this. The young lady replies that she shouldn't. She just feels sorry for the Duke. The woman strokes the girl's head. She says that being around Ellie sometimes reminds her of her own son. The girl asks in surprise if she has a son. The woman replies that yes, she does, but he is already an adult and works in a mine. The young lady asks if she can see the mine, and after a while they find themselves there. A young man is working on a sword and thinks he needs to get results as soon as possible. It turns out to be Jared Amanta. He is worried that at this rate, he will not be able to please his sick mother and gain his father's recognition. At that moment, the man turns to him and asks how many times he has sighed heavily. The young man is surprised and asks why the Baron has come here. The man replies that he does not need a reason to come to his mine. The young man falls silent. His father asks if he has learned anything. The young man apologizes and says not yet. He looks depressed. The Baron says there is no need to rush. Even if progress is slow, that is normal. But the guy replies that he will do everything possible not to disappoint his father. The man is surprised, but still says that's fine. Then he turns to leave. Suddenly, he bumps into a young lady. The girl says she is hurt. The man asks in surprise if it is really Miss Ellie. Then he asks why she is here with Vieira. The girl politely greets the Baron. The woman explains that she knows about his dissatisfaction, but still wanted to come here with Mrs. Ellie. The man sighs heavily and says that there are many dangers here. Meanwhile, the main character is already standing next to their son. She asks what that blue thing behind him is. The girl assumes it is a weapon and asks if she can touch it. She turns to the young man with shining eyes and asks for permission. The young man realizes that he is standing before the future Duchess of Clyde. He is surprised that she is much smaller than he expected and replies that the sword is dangerous, so she must not touch it. The young lady is upset and quietly says that this is how things turn out. Then she apologizes for disturbing him. The boy repeats that the sword is dangerous. Hearing this, the little girl becomes even more upset. Then the young man says that instead of the sword, he will show her something else. The girl immediately perks up and asks if it's true. The Baron is about to say something, but his wife gently stops him and simply shakes her head. Meanwhile, the guy hands the girl a monocle made with a mana stone. He shows her how to use it, puts it on, and tells her to simply hold it up to her eye. But when the young lady puts it on, she immediately says that she feels dizzy. The man explains that she needs to close one eye. The girl does as he says, and the man confirms that everything is now correct. Vieira watches them and says with surprise that she wonders if she would feel the same way if she had a granddaughter. Meanwhile, the main character notices other stones. She comes closer and asks what they are. The guy immediately says that they must not be touched. The girl is surprised and asks why. He explains that it is a special mineral that was recently discovered. When exposed to heat, it immediately hardens and sticks firmly, and then begins to release a strange substance. The girl quickly backs away and says that it looks like some kind of monster. The boy asks in surprise if she has ever seen monsters before. The little girl replies that it wasn't her, but Damien. Before coming here, he met a monster and told her how scared he was. Meanwhile, Damien is practicing fencing. The teacher asks what is wrong with him, and the boy says that he thought he heard Ellie calling him. The Baron's son smiles and says that the young lady's words are indeed accurate. If you catch something like that once, you'll never let it go. The man is a little surprised. He realizes that he saw something similar when he was a child. When he was a knight, he noticed some shiny ore and realized that there might be valuable minerals in such a place. It was a rare find, and he was going to take it to the Baron. But at that moment, someone nearby spoke to him. The person told him not to touch it because it was not ore at all, but a rare type of monster. The Baron was surprised and asked if it was really a monster. The woman explained it to him. On the outside, it shines like a precious stone, but once you touch it, you can't let go. Despite its beautiful appearance, it is a monster that sinks into human flesh. Now both the young man and the Baron remember this story. The main character just smiles. She realizes that she knew about this beforehand. The mine she found is actually a monster's lair. Its poison is not immediately noticeable, but if you hold it for too long, the toxin gradually penetrates the body and turns into a deadly weapon. The girl thinks that they will probably decide to use it first. And yet, the idea of creating a weapon from a monster is very similar to the style of Chouette's vassals. Moreover, everything is happening 3 years earlier than it should have. At that moment, someone suggests that Miss Ellie return. The girl sighs and says that she didn't even have time to talk to the guy properly. The woman replies that this is enough. Mrs. Ellie has done so much for her son, her husband, and herself. The young lady looks at her. The woman adds that it would be best to return before dark, otherwise the Duke will start to worry. The girl agrees. When she turns around, she sees her father and son discussing something and smiling. Meanwhile, the Duke is sitting in his office writing documents. Someone reports to him that Mrs. Ellie spent time with Baroness Amanta today. The man says that the girl has become close not to the Baron but to his wife. He notes that the child is quite intelligent. Thanks to this, the Baron can finally concentrate on his work. The butler hands the object to the Duke. The Duke looks at it and asks if it is really an arrow. The butler confirms this and says that it is made of a recently discovered material. The Duke touches the arrow, and it begins to stick to his fingers. He asks in surprise what it is. The butler explains that the mineral they found turned out to be a monster. He admires the Baron for being able to use the monster to create a weapon. The Duke says that he thought the Baron had completely lost his mind due to his wife's illness. He did not expect him to create something so useful. But the Duke believes that it is better to make swords than arrows. The butler replies that this is only the beginning. They intend to develop this business gradually. Then he adds that he now understands why the Duke brought Miss Ellie. The Duke asks why. The butler says that this discovery was made possible thanks to her. The Duke is surprised and asks if it was really thanks to the child. The butler confirms this and says that her words helped them understand that they were dealing with a monster. The Duke thinks about it. He remembers that he brought Ellie because he suspected her connection to the Emperor. Despite her age, she has a strong character and excellent strategic thinking. He suggests that the imperial family may have used the child to tame Damien and subjugate him. Moreover, Clyde's descent into eternal sleep may not have been an accident at all. The Duke thought he could benefit from revealing the truth, even if the child's words were accidental. But now he has doubts. If she is really connected to the Emperor, why is she behaving this way? At that moment, the butler hears footsteps and instantly pulls a dagger from his jacket. He prepares to attack, but suddenly sees Miss Ellie standing in front of him. The girl calmly greets him. The man hides the dagger and asks why she has come. The girl says she wanted to greet the Duke. The man replies that he understands. In her thoughts, the young lady admits that she wanted to eavesdrop on the conversation a little. She wanted to know how the developments were progressing. Now she understands that she needs to be more careful. She was almost sent to eternal sleep. The Duke asks why she came. The girl says she wanted to deliver something. She holds out a small bag and says it is a remedy for headaches. The girl heard from Rona that the Duke sometimes has headaches. That's why she brought it. The butler says that the girl is very caring and asks where she got the medicine. The girl replies that she just remembered how someone recently complained of pain. Then she abruptly changes the subject and asks what the butler is hiding behind his back. The man pretends not to understand what she is talking about and discreetly throws the dagger behind him. He shows her his empty hand. The girl smiles and says that she probably just imagined it. The Duke asks why she tried so hard. The girl replies that she was just worried. The Duke doubts her and asks if it's true. The girl confidently says yes. The butler suddenly asks for some medicine for himself because he also sometimes has headaches. The girl agrees and puts the medicine in his hand, but the Duke suddenly turns to Franz. He says he will take the medicine himself and snatches it away. The butler is surprised. He thinks that a man who has never even felt dizzy has suddenly decided to take medicine. The Duke asks why she brought it. After all, it is clearly not just a gift. The girl realizes that he is too perceptive. She cannot simply leave. Then she reminds him that he said she could choose a family to be adopted into. The Duke confirms this. The girl asks if she can make another choice. The man is surprised and asks if she really wants to change families. The girl smiles and says she wants to stay with the Schuetz family. The Duke is slightly surprised. The girl understands that she is not going to stay there forever. When she gets older, she will be able to refuse adoption. For now, she only asks for a little time. The man coldly says that this is absurd. He does not like to be disturbed, especially when it's children doing it. The girl realizes that she has been rejected outright. She quietly says that she understands and asks for forgiveness. Then she is about to leave. The girl wishes the Duke a good night and leaves. The butler says that Miss Ellie is still a child. He asks if it would have been better to say it more gently. The Duke replies that it is a child's medicine. The butler says that this is natural, because she is a child. The Duke replies that she is trying to cure the curse with a child's remedy that is not even suitable for adults. He also considers the possibility that the girl may be a spy for the Emperor, but even realizing this, he still wonders why he is starting to worry about her at all. The next morning, the main character sits and reflects. She expected the Duke to reject her, but he turned out to be even more determined than she had thought. The girl realizes that if she were his daughter, everything would be easier. He probably doesn't want to adopt the daughter of a thief. It could damage the reputation of the Duchy of Schuetz. There are 4 years left before Damien goes to war, and in 5 years, the main character of the story will appear. That means she has 9 years. The girl realizes that this is enough time. She gets out of bed and decides that she must build her life before the real heroine appears. Meanwhile, someone says that it is an honor for them to assist in the Duke's training. Vieira adds that, at first, she couldn't believe it. The young lady is also delighted and hopes that Damien and the Baron will get along well. She understands that this is related to the mine. The Baron must have received a lot of help, but she is still concerned that Damien may be stubborn. If the Baron wants to help and he refuses, everything could fall apart. Therefore, it is better to take action in advance. When the young lady enters the room, she sees the boy sitting on the floor. The girl immediately runs up to him and asks if he is hurt. She takes him by the cheeks and notices that they have turned red. The girl is worried and even thinks about calling a doctor. The young man says he is not injured. It was just a hard workout, so he sat down to rest. The girl asks if this is true. He replies that he is not lying. She breathes a sigh of relief and rejoices. Meanwhile, Vieira greets the Duke and notices from the knights, faces how hard the training was. Ellie says she will make sure that no one causes Damien any trouble. But he replies that it is not difficult for him at all. The girl is surprised and asks if he really doesn't want her to come. The young man immediately shakes his head and says that's not the case. Then he looks at her with puppy dog eyes and admits that it is difficult for him after all. The knights nearby are shocked and think that it is their fault. Damien adds that if Ellie is around, it will be easier for him, so he would be happy if she came more often. Ellie suddenly remembers how he used to look at her like that before. For example, when he ate Betty's sweets and tried to justify himself. But she decides that he cannot be lying, strokes his head, and says she will visit more often. The girl also praises him for his efforts. Vieira looks at them and says how cute they both are. The knights are almost crying, begging for mercy. At that moment, the Baron enters the room and greets the young Duke. He is surprised to see his wife and Ellie there. The girl says hello, and the Baron says he did not expect to see them together. Ellie explains that she came to thank him for the training. The Baron replies that, on the contrary, she herself helped him a lot. He says that he was going to give her a gift later, but since she is here, he will give it to her now. The girl looks at the object and is surprised because it is a bow. The Baron says it is a gift for her. Ellie is amazed and thinks that she expected a gift for Damien. She realizes that it is a high-quality bow with low mana consumption. It seems that her hint was more useful than she thought. Damien looks at the bow and feels a little jealous because he hasn't received a gift yet. Ellie asks if swords aren't used more often on the battlefield. The Baron replies that this is true, but their ability to create swords is still limited. Ellie realizes that the Baron's skill has not yet reached the level of creating perfect swords. The Baron mentions a blacksmith named Eborg. The girl asks who he is. He explains that Eborg is the duchy's blacksmith, and almost all of the knights' swords were made by him. Ellie asks if it is possible to request a new sword from him. The Baron looks slightly gloomy. He says that Eborg is now blind in one eye. The girl is shocked and asks if he is really blind. The Baron replies that the doctor fears he will lose his sight completely. Ellie asks if he can be cured. The Baron says that Eborg himself refuses treatment. The girl wants to ask why, but realizes that it would seem too nosy, so she just says that he probably has his reasons. The Baron is surprised that she doesn't ask any more questions. Ellie explains that her mother taught her not to meddle in other people's affairs. Baron agrees. The girl smiles and says the training can continue. She asks him to take care of Damien. In her mind, Ellie hopes that the Baron will understand her hint and be gentler with him. Now she decides to find out more about Eborg later. At that moment, someone touches her arm. She turns around and sees Damien. Ellie asks what's wrong. The boy quietly says that he doesn't like that man. The girl looks at him, and then at the Baron. She hopes the Baron didn't hear those words. She asks why. After all, even though the Baron looks like a grandfather, he is very strong. Damien clutches his shirt and says that the man is bad. With tears in his eyes, he says that the Baron spoke rudely about Ellie. He repeats that Ellie is good, but the Baron called her a bad child and sent her away. Ellie strokes his head and says that she is fine. She says that it is enough for her that Damien trusts her. The boy asks if that is really enough. The girl replies that it is. She asks him to trust the Baron as much as he trusts her. After all, the Baron will be able to help him a lot. Damien agrees and says that if Ellie wants him to, he'll try. The girl happily hugs him and says it's a great decision. In her mind, she realizes that in the original story, he didn't hate the Baron so much. Perhaps this happened because she intervened. Ellie says she will be there for him and wishes him good luck with his training. She realizes that now, there is only one way to make Damien stronger. If the Schuetz family accepts him, the others will also stop treating him with hostility. The training begins. Damien attacks the Baron, but he easily deflects the blows. At that moment, the butler approaches and says that Madame was here with Mrs. Ellie. The girl is surprised to see him, and he says that it is the Duke's first day of training. He admits that he was worried, but it seems that everything is going well. Ellie says that the Baron is also taking the training seriously. Then she shows the bow she was given and says that it is made of a new mineral. The girl thinks that the Baron now treats her better, but the butler just turns away and says that the Duke has lost his initiative. Ellie senses a strange reaction and notices that he is hiding something behind his back. She tries to look inside, but at that moment, noise comes from the training hall. The girl begins to worry about Damien. The butler asks if she wants to go and see. Ellie clenches her fists. She says she wants to, but she won't interfere. After all, Damien must learn to get up on his own. The Baron stands with his sword pointed and notices that the boy has tried several times to match his pace. He realizes that the Duke's technique is still weak, but his ability to read movements and attack sharply is very impressive. Even experienced knights cannot always analyze a fight so quickly. The Baron wonders how this boy manages to do it. Damien attacks again. The Baron easily parries the blow. The man realizes that the boy has been training with other knights before him. Judging by their faces, the training was much more difficult than they had expected. The Baron once fought monsters, and this reminds him of those times. The boy falls to the ground. The Baron says that the training is not over yet, and he must get up. Damien looks at him stubbornly. The Baron says there are two types of fencing. One is for attack, the other is for defense. His attacks are already excellent, but he does not yet know how to defend others. The boy clenches his fist and gets up again. He is breathing heavily, but continues to look straight at the Baron. The Baron is a little taken aback by this gaze. Then he knocks the sword out of the boy's hands and says that's enough for today. Damien insists that he can continue, but the Baron replies that showing weakness could cost him victory. Therefore, they will continue after a break. The Baron talks to the knights and then turns around. He sees Ellie approaching Damien and smiles. Now he understands why Duke Schutz brought this child. Ellie looks at the boy and realizes that this is the first time she has seen him so upset. She thinks about how to support him because he still does not like the Baron. But Damien says he will try and become strong. The girl smiles because now he has a goal. She says he is already strong enough. But the boy replies that he must become even stronger to protect his loved ones. Ellie remembers that in the original story, he said these words later. She just says that then he needs to eat more. Damien wonders what food has to do with it. The girl laughs and says that if you eat well, you can defeat even 17 enemies. At that moment, the maid approaches them. She says that lunch is ready and invites them to the table. Ellie agrees and calls Damien to come eat and get stronger. Later, they walk along the road, and the girl notices that it is quite cold today. Ellie approaches a tree and notices the duchy's doctor coming out of the hut. The doctor fights off the crows, and the girl realizes that he has come to treat Eborg today. This is a great chance to learn more about him. She calls out to the doctor, but he is already communicating with the Viscount through a magic ball. The doctor reports that Eborg has completely lost sight in one eye and believes that the medicine is only making his condition worse. The Viscount orders him to verify this because without Eborg, no one will be able to create swords with the Duke's aura. Without these swords, the power of the Duchy of Schutz will weaken, and their family, the Quintars, will be able to take over the arms trade. The doctor agrees. The Viscount adds that the Baron's mineral must not be shown to Eborg under any circumstances. The doctor promises to keep an eye on it. Ellie, having heard everything, thinks that something very strange is going on. The doctor asks if he will get a share of the arms trade if everything works out. The Viscount replies irritably that he is not a liar. The doctor quickly agrees and ends the conversation. Ellie thinks they have completely lost their minds. After a while, Eborg wakes up and complains that it is too noisy today. He asks people to be quieter, but suddenly notices a girl. The man grabs her sharply and asks what she is doing here, because it is dangerous. He scolds her and says she is not afraid at all. But Ellie calmly greets him. Eborg realizes that he has started shouting and may scare the child. However, the girl simply apologizes and thanks him for his help. The man is surprised and says that he didn't save her at all. Then he asks why she came. Ellie hands him an arrow and asks if it's cool. She explains that she received it as a gift but has never shot a bow before. So she came to a deserted place to practice so as not to hurt anyone. The girl notices that the arrow has caught the man's interest. She offers to give it to him if he wants to look at it. Eborg is surprised and asks if she really will give him such a thing. Ellie realizes that he cannot take his eyes off the arrow, but the man turns away and says he won't take things from a child. The girl replies that the Baron will be upset if she just gives away the gift. So she offers to lend him the arrow for a little while. Let him examine it, and then return it. The man looks at the arrow again and is clearly interested. In the end, he agrees to examine it. Ellie realizes that she has successfully attracted his attention with the new mineral. Eborg suggests going inside first so they don't freeze. They go inside, and the girl notices the dirt and the strong smell of alcohol. The man tells her to sit down because now he will have to clean up because of the child. Ellie thinks that someone is trying to harm the duchy by exploiting Eborg's misfortune. He can hardly see anything, and his blindness may be someone's plot. The girl decides that his eyesight must not be allowed to deteriorate. She notices a strange medicine on the table and thinks it looks suspicious. She wants to take it away to check it out. When the man turns around, she pretends that she is just cold. Eborg grumbles that she is a capricious child. Then he lights a fire in the fireplace. Ellie thinks he probably doesn't eat well and says she's hungry. The man replies that he has no food. The girl asks what he eats then. He remains silent, and she notices only bottles of alcohol around her. Ellie says that you can't live like that, and that you need to eat properly. The man replies wearily that he has heard such words before. He tells her that he had a daughter who was prettier and smarter than her. But she drowned in the Red Lake. He blames himself because he should have stopped her. Ellie says it's not his fault. She remembers how her mother also fell into an eternal sleep. The girl admits that her mother did wrong. But if Ellie had not been born, perhaps her mother would not have made those mistakes. She says her mother would still say it wasn't Eborg's fault. If his daughter were there, she would say the same thing. The man looks at the girl in surprise. He remembers that many years ago, someone said the same words to him. But that person is no longer in this world. And yet they are very similar. After a while, Ellie says it's time for her to go. She reminds him that she only borrowed the arrow for today. The girl suggests playing with her friends tomorrow. She asks if he would like to come. The man agrees and asks where he should come. Ellie replies that it is to the duchy. Eborg is surprised But the girl smiles and leaves. She says she will wait for him. The man remains alone near the hut. He thinks he has never met such a strange servant. The girl does everything her own way. He looks at the arrow in his hands, and he realizes that a long night lies ahead of him. The next morning, he sets off for the duchy. He hardly slept, spending the whole night examining the arrow. The man wants to see the ore from which the arrowhead is made. But he doubts that anyone would entrust work to a blacksmith who hasn't worked for 10 years. He looks at the Duke's castle and realizes how long it has been since he was last here. The man is afraid to meet the Duke because he will not be able to look him in the eye. He checks to see if he smells of alcohol. After all, he cannot appear before the children in such a state. At the gate, knights stop him and ask why he has come. They notice the arrow and draw their swords, demanding that he identify himself. The man tries to explain, but realizes that no one here knows him anymore. He thinks about how to explain everything. At that moment, the gate opens. Vieira appears and says she hasn't seen him in a long time. The knights ask if she knows this man. Vieira replies that she knows Eborg very well. She says that they haven't seen each other for a long time. After a while, Eborg thanks her for her help. Vieira smiles and says that with an arrow in his hands, he could have been mistaken for an enemy. Then she says that Mrs. Ellie is waiting for him. The man is surprised and mutters that the girl does not look like an ordinary servant. He enters the room. Ellie greets him cheerfully and says that he has arrived early. Baron Amanta asks in surprise if this is really Eborg. The maid apologizes for the sudden intrusion and asks if Dr. Dearn is there. The man gets up from his seat and calmly replies that yes, he is there. The woman explains that Mrs. Ellie is complaining about the condition of her eyes after using the eye drops he prescribed. Then she asks in surprise how this could have happened. The man immediately replies that it must be some kind of misunderstanding, as he never prescribed any medication to her. The maid shows him the bottle of medicine and asks if that means he really didn't prescribe it. The doctor looks at the bottle and suddenly realizes that this is the same medicine he gave to Eborg. He recalls that he specially prepared this liquid from the water of the cursed Red Lake to impair Eborg's vision. Therefore, the doctor is horrified to think how this remedy ended up in the hands of the thief's daughter. He realizes that the Duke already considers the girl his heir. If the child went blind, he himself would be doomed to eternal sleep. In a panic, he cries out and asks where the girl is now, because she needs to be examined urgently. The drug is very dangerous. The woman is surprised by his words because he himself said that it was medicine. But the man indignantly asks who could have said such nonsense because it is real poison and something must be done urgently. He declares that he will go and check on her himself and asks where the lady is. He asks to be shown to her quickly, but when the man turns around, Eborg stands before him, clearly enraged. He asks how the doctor ended up here. Eborg coldly remarks that the medicine must have been fake, and the doctor frantically thinks about what to say next. He admits that the medicine he gave Eborg was actually poison. The Duke turns to Dearn and asks what it all means. Did the doctor really give Eborg fake medicine? Whispering begins in the hall. People exchange glances and are surprised because Eborg's health seems to be fine. He looks perfectly healthy. The doctor realizes that he cannot go to sleep forever, leaving everything as it is. Therefore, he declares that he was acting on orders. And these orders were allegedly given by Viscount Quintar. The man immediately asks what kind of nonsense he is talking about. The doctor continues and reminds him that it was the Viscount who said that the military power of the North would only weaken after Eborg fell into eternal sleep. The Viscount is shocked and asks if the guy is trying to pin his sins on him. Then the doctor takes out a magic ball and says he has proof. A hologram appears in the ball, where the Viscount says that without Eborg, no one will be able to create a sword with the Duke's aura, and without such a weapon, Duke Chouette's army will be weakened, and then the Quintar family will have a great opportunity to engage in the arms trade. The Viscount is horrified to think that this stupid Dearn has actually recorded their entire conversation. At that moment, the Duke addresses them. He coldly remarks that it's all quite amusing. He suspected that while he was looking for the child, a rat was lurking somewhere. But he never imagined that she would be able to hide for so long, right in his own castle. After saying this, he points his sword at the Viscount. The Viscount meets his gaze and realizes that these are the eyes of a man whose mania subsides only at the sight of red liquid. He begins to tremble, and the Duke calmly says that this sword is lighter than others and very comfortable to wield. Therefore, cutting down an enemy with such a weapon will be easier than easy. The knight nearby realizes that the Duke is furious, and if things continue like this, he may completely lose his composure. At this moment, Eborg turns to the knight and says that after 10 years, he is dedicating this sword to him. The man feels as if he is standing at the place of execution and realizes that he cannot accept the sword from the one who dropped his hammer 10 years ago. Meanwhile, the Duke throws away the Viscount's sword and says that too much time has passed. His hands are no longer used to holding such fakes. And since he now has a real sword in his hands, it is worth testing it. He asks if this is not so and slowly walks towards the Viscount. After a while, the other aristocrats watch in shock. When it's all over, the Duke turns to Eborg, who asks what happened. Eborg understands that he accepted the sword from him, but must be prepared to suffer punishment for the problems that arose in his absence. He calmly says that he is ready to accept any punishment. But the Duke interrupts him and unexpectedly asks how much longer they will have to wait. The man is a little surprised, and Erhard explains that he is talking about the creation of swords. It will take time to distribute them among the knights, and the Duke would like this not to be delayed. The man assures him that he will make the swords as quickly as possible. The Duke just stares at him, while the knight watches the scene and realizes that, fortunately, Eborg's case and the uncovering of the conspiracy have ended well. And since the Duke's madness saw the red liquid, he should have calmed down. But the knight still wonders why the Duke's aura has not yet disappeared. Could it be that even such a large amount of red liquid was not enough to calm him down? The Duke suddenly moves on. The knight, shocked, asks where he is going. The man opens the door to the young lady's room, and she asks in surprise what has happened. The Duke grabs her by the shoulders and starts shaking her, asking about her eyes. He was told that she had put some strange medicine in them. The girl quietly replies that she feels dizzy. She thinks that her lie has been exposed. Judging by the red liquid on his clothes, things have ended badly. The girl doesn't even know what to say and realizes that she should have gone there herself and pretended to put the medicine in her eyes. At that moment, the maid addresses the Duke. She says she did not expect his visit, so she did not have time to prepare anything. A knight rushes into the room and asks loudly where the Duke has gone without saying anything, and so quickly. He notices the Duke standing next to the young lady and calls him back, but the Duke doesn't even move. The main character just smiles quietly. When they leave the room, the knight sighs heavily. The Duke asks why he sighs all the time, and the guy is surprised that he really doesn't understand the reason. The man replies that if he understood, he wouldn't have asked the question. The knight hands him a handkerchief and says that he should wipe off the red liquid first. Then he explains that he is talking about Lady Ellie. The Duke asks him to be more specific, and the knight replies that everyone has long been accustomed to the Duke sending people to eternal sleep. But Miss Ellie is just a child. She must have been very frightened when she saw so much red liquid. In her place, many children might even have fainted. At that moment, the maid comes out into the hallway. She says that the Duke seems to have dropped it, so she brought it back. The man takes the jar of medicine. The maid explains that Miss Ellie received this medicine from her, but apparently did not use it and gave it to the Duke. The knight says that if he were in her place, he would have drunk it all at once. He wouldn't care if the sick person was picky or not. The Duke silently reaches out to him, takes a handkerchief from his hands, and tells him to give it back. The guy agrees. The Duke recalls how the young lady looked at him and asks Auntie if other knights wear something similar. The young man replies that, of course, they do not. Then the Duke says to distribute one handkerchief among the knights so that they can wipe away the red liquid at any moment. He adds that the fabric can be anything. He recalls the words of the maid who asked Ellie where she got the scratch on her face. The girl then said that she had scratched herself with a handkerchief that a knight had lent her. The Duke thinks about this and says that the handkerchiefs should be made of the softest fabric. He realizes that Ellie may ask the knights for a handkerchief again, so it would be better to add a beautiful pattern. He turns to Rona and orders her to decorate the handkerchiefs with floral patterns, while Auntie will take care of distributing them. The knight remains silent, and the maid replies that she understands the order. After that, the Duke leaves, and she quietly asks if something has happened to him. After a while, someone informs the master and mistress that they have arrived. The young lady is surprised and realizes that this is the Chouette's estate in Villainess. When she steps out of the carriage, she notices a huge crowd of people. The maid asks if she really doesn't want to visit the shopping street, since the Duke has allowed her to take a long-awaited walk for the first time. The girl replies that she likes this market too. She understands that after refusing to be adopted, she will need the support of another trading company to conduct business on her own behalf. Therefore, now that the opportunity has arisen, she needs to explore the market. The girl tells Damien that they can go, but there are many people around, so it may be dangerous, and asks him not to let go of her hand under any circumstances. The boy asks if he will have to let go of her hand when there are fewer people around. The girl realizes that he is afraid of crowds and says that if he wants, they can hold hands the whole time. He asks in surprise if this is true, and asks her to promise that she won't let go of his hand. The young lady agrees and suggests they go in one direction. They approach a merchant who says that this is a new weapon that arrived just today. The girl realizes that, as expected, the North is best prepared for battles with monsters. Later, they try the food, and the young lady asks the young man if he likes it and if it tastes good. Then she notices that there is sauce on his face. She wonders what she can use to wipe it off, since she doesn't have anything. One of the knights hands her a handkerchief and tells her to use it. The main character thanks him and remarks that he seems to like beautiful things. After that, she carefully wipes the young man's face. She decides that she has looked around enough and now wants to learn more about the products. The girl's gaze stops on one potion. The salesman asks if she is interested in it. The girl replies that she is, because it is very amazing. The man asks if she knows how much it costs. But when the knight and maids appear nearby, he says that if she has enough money, she can at least take a look. The girl asks excitedly what it is, and the man replies that it is a potion that heals wounds. He politely addresses her as an honored lady and explains that the potion helps with minor injuries, but if the wound is serious, it is better to consult a priest. The girl realizes that the effect is weak for such a price. It would be much better to go to a temple that can cleanse even Duke Schuet's madness. But she also understands that poor people cannot afford divine help, which is why they buy such potions. At this moment, the woman asks Miss Ellie if she is in pain and why she needs healing potions. The little girl replies that she is fine. She just thought she would give it to the Duke when he gets sick. One of the maids suggests buying a potion as a gift. It is customary on their estate that during their first outing, children buy gifts for their parents, which makes the gift even more meaningful. The main character thinks about the word gift and realizes that a potion for Duke Schuet's, who didn't even blink when he received the medicine for his headache, is definitely not the best option. She decides that she will not buy it under any circumstances. The girl says that she will look for something else. Then her gaze falls on the jewelry. She thinks how beautiful it is. The salesperson says she has excellent taste and offers to help her choose something for herself. The young lady looks at a pair of earrings and notices that they resemble Damien's eyes. She wonders whether to buy them, and in the end decides to purchase something. After that, she decides that she is done with gifts and tells the maids that they can leave. But when she looks at them, she notices strange looks, as if they are a little jealous. The girl wonders if they are also expecting gifts from her. She understands that although they serve her on the orders of the Duke, they are actually very polite people. She has never bought anything for anyone before, but she thinks she could do so as a token of gratitude to everyone in the castle. However, the girl is worried whether they will like her gifts. At that moment, another family approaches the shop. The man says that the items here are very beautiful. The salesman invites them to take a look, explaining that the items are handmade. They are inexpensive, but very popular. The woman admires the sparkling item and says that it looks particularly beautiful. She suggests choosing something for their child, and the man agrees. The main character notices that a crowd has suddenly gathered near the shop. While the salesman is wrapping the purchase, the boy quietly puts one of the decorations in his pocket. The girl sees this and suddenly realizes that this is probably how Duke Schuet's felt when he noticed her nimble hands. She realizes that it is not her place to do this and could simply walk away. But she does not want to allow such behavior in a place where she plans to do business in the future. The girl calls out to the boy and asks him where he is going. He asks her impatiently why she cares, and she calmly says that she saw him steal something. The woman immediately asks what she is talking about, and whether their child has really done something wrong. The girl realizes that she has hit the nail on the head. She even thinks that this would be the perfect situation for the Duke's first gift. The woman quickly says that they knew nothing about it. The man insists that the child simply made a mistake out of stupidity. He orders the boy to apologize immediately. But when the knight gives them a cold stare, the man starts to get nervous. He tells his son that he won't do that again and asks where he learned to steal. He continues to apologize and says that they are looking after this child, but they cannot correct his habits. If they are still angry, let them take him away and do whatever they want with him. They can punish him or even make him a slave, because it was his own decision. The boy, in shock, yells that they themselves ordered him to do it. They promise to return his belongings and give him bread if he did what they asked. The man immediately asks when he said such a thing and dismisses the boy's words as complete nonsense. He then pushes the child away, roughly. The main character watches this and does not understand what they are doing to the boy, after which she loudly tells them to stop. She is sure that these are not his real parents. Most likely, they are villains who find children in difficult situations and exploit them. The girl says that they themselves claimed that nothing bad had happened. Then why beat a child who is not even related to them? But the man just pushes her away and rudely asks why she is interfering. The maids immediately rush to the lady and ask if she is all right. They offer to call a doctor or a carriage. Everyone around looks at the man with fury. He gets scared and says that they'd better leave quickly. But the maid loudly orders Sir Rain to catch them. The man rushes after the fugitives, and she asks the lady if she can get up. The young lady replies that she is fine. Then she asks Damien if he will help her. She also turns to the boy and asks him to wait. The girl hands him the bracelet and says she is returning it. The boy is shocked and asks how she found him. The girl explains that when she grabbed the man by his pants, the bracelet accidentally fell out. Damien tells Ellie to be careful. The young lady understands that the boy had to cooperate with those people because they took the bracelet from him. She understands his situation, but still asks him not to steal next time, because without skills, it is too obvious. At that moment, the maid runs up to her mistress and asks excitedly if she is hurt anywhere. She explains that she did not know exactly where the girl had hurt herself, so she bought several different medicines just in case. The main character thinks in surprise, could the maid have bought all this in the short time she was talking to Grace? The girl thanks her and says that she is really fine. She adds that, fortunately, the blow was not so strong. Another maid suggests returning to the carriage, because if she walks for a long time after the fall, something will definitely start to hurt later. Then she turns to Sir Rain and asks him to take the children. The knight apologizes and gently lifts them up. The maid adds that the scoundrels he caught should be sent away in another carriage. At this moment, the main character wonders if they are already going to return. She hasn't even bought any gifts yet. The girl turns to Ivan, Ashel, and May and says that she hasn't had time to see the whole market yet, so she asks if they can stay here a little longer. She assures them that she will sit quietly on Sir Rain's lap, and if she suddenly feels any pain, she will immediately return to the carriage. After that, the young lady asks, hopefully, if they agree. The maids, literally blinded by her smile, agree, but ask her to be careful. One of them says that they, along with the other knights, will deal with the captured gang. Meanwhile, the young man is still watching them from afar and realizes that he is looking at a child from a noble family. Somewhere deep down, he even feels a little envious. The main character hands him the medicine and says that they will see each other again. She adds that she herself is not sick, so he should take the medicine for himself. The girl says goodbye and thinks that in the future her situation will be completely different from before, but she still asks him to take care of Damien. Meanwhile, the Duke is in his study. A man brings him a new sword and tells him that the weapon is ready, then carefully places it on the table. The Duke carefully examines the sword and calmly remarks that, as expected, his skills have not rested at all.